Welcome to the City of Bakersfield Planning Commission meeting. This television broadcast is brought to you by the local cable companies, the County of Kern, and the City of Bakersfield. You can watch the rebroadcast of this meeting Saturday at 7 p.m. and Sunday at 10 a.m. You can download the agenda for this meeting at www.bakersfieldcity.us. Presiding over this evening's meeting, Chair Daniel Cater.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to call to order the December 5th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Cater.
Here.
Commissioner Komen.
Here.
Commissioner Bell. Commissioner Bowers.
Here.
Commissioner Lomas.
Here.
Commissioner Rudnick. Commissioner Wade.
Here.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for attending tonight's Planning Commission meeting. This commission provides an opportunity for public participation in the development process throughout the City of Bakersfield. The Planning Commission considers a wide variety of projects, including subdivision maps, zone changes, general plan amendments, and much more. When applications are received, the City Planning Division will analyze the request. Planning staff will present the facts about the project along with their recommendation to the Commission, who will approve an item or make a recommendation as appropriate. Our goal is to carefully consider each project and make a decision that will balance individual rights with public welfare and the general well-being of our community. We will now receive public statements. This time is reserved for anyone who wishes to address the Commission on a matter not on the public hearing portion of the agenda. If you are here for items 5A through 5F and 6A and 6B, this is not the time to speak. Does anyone in the audience wish to address the Commission? If so, please come forward and state your name. Seeing no public statements, we will now move on to the consent calendar non-public hearing items. These agenda items typically involve housekeeping or administrative matters that do not require a public hearing. Does any commissioner wish to remove a consent calendar public non-hearing item for separate consideration? Seeing none, before we vote, Commissioner Bowers has a conflict of interest and will not be voting on item 4B. So with that, may I have a motion to adopt staff's recommendation on items 4A and 5B, 4B, with Commissioner Bowers abstaining from 4B.
Motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Wade. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Komen. Commissioners, please cast your votes.
Motion passes with Commissioner Bell and Commissioner Rudnick absent.
Thank you. We will now move on to consent calendar public hearing items. The next agenda section includes public hearing items that are considered routine or non-controversial. These items have been reviewed by staff and are conditioned in accordance with the requirements of the municipal code. The planning director will read each of the items on the consent calendar to ensure that the public has an understanding of the items to be considered. If you would like to speak on an item, please come forward after the items are read and ask that the item be removed for discussion. If the item is not removed by a member of the public or commissioner, the commission will vote on all items in one motion without further comment.
And just before we move on to this one, I want to clarify that last motion that Commissioner Bowers recused himself on 4B. That way that's reflected in the minutes.
Yes, please make sure that's reflected. Thank you. Okay. With that, I have a conflict of interest on item 5A and will not be voting on that. With that, Mr. Coyle, will you please provide a brief description of the items on the consent calendar for this evening?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. On tonight's agenda, we have Project 5A, which is an extension of time for vesting tentative parcel map 12062, which is a proposal to approve 3 more years to develop this project, which consists of 16 parcels on 465 acres for commercial development located south of Stockdale Highway between Nord Avenue and a half-mile east of Heath Road. Project 5B is an extension of time for revised vesting tentative tract map 6352, which is a proposal to approve 3 more years to develop this project, consisting of 463 single-family lots on 157 acres, located south of Highway 178 east of Vineland Road. Item 5C is vesting tentative parcel map 12354, which is a proposal to subdivide 13.83 acres into 10 parcels for commercial development located on the northeast corner of Stockdale Highway and Allen Road. Project 5D is General Plan Amendment Zone Change number 19-0009, which is a request to amend the land use element designation on 3.75 acres from rural residential to general commercial, and a change in the zone district from agriculture to regional commercial planned commercial development located at the northeast corner of Ash Road and Taft Highway. Project 5E is General Plan Amendment number 19-0158, which is a request to amend the land use element designation on 2.31 acres from low-density residential to general commercial at 7301 South Union Avenue. And finally, Project 5F is an amendment to Title 17 of the Bakersfield Municipal Code. We are proposing an amendment regulating design standards for retail developments. This concludes my reading of the consent calendar public hearings.
Thank you, Mr. Coyle. At this time, I will open all of the consent calendar public hearing items. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on a consent calendar public hearing item? If so, again, this is not the time to take testimony. Just request that the item be removed to the public hearing portion of the agenda.
Would you remove items 5D and 5E from the consent calendar, please?
Thank you. And may I have your name as well?
My name is Gordon Knipp.
D and E. Thank you. Same. Okay. Thank you. Is there? Please come to the front. Possible. It's the same. Oh, D and E. Yes. Okay. It's already moved to the public hearing, so the hearing on the portion will be the next. Is there any other audience members wishing to move an item from consent to the public hearing portion of the agenda? Seeing no other audience members, are there any commissioners wishing to move an item from consent? I'd like to ask that item 5F be moved to the public hearing portion of the agenda. And seeing no other commissioners wishing to move an item, this time the public hearing on the consent calendar items 5A, 5B, and 5C are now closed. May I get a motion to adopt staff's recommendation on the consent calendar public hearing items 5A, 5B, and 5C, with myself abstaining from item 5, voting on 5A.
I'd like to make a motion to approve items 5A through C with Chair Cater abstaining.
On item 5A, yes. Okay, may I have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Wade. Commissioners, please cast your vote with myself abstaining on item 5A.
Motion passes with Commissioner Rudnick and Commissioner Bell absent, and Chair Cater abstaining from item 5A.
Thank you. We will now move on to the public hearings portion of the agenda. We'll first hear public hearings from those items removed from the consent calendar, items 5D, 5E, and 5F, followed by 2 additional public hearings, items 6A and 6B. Before we begin, I'd like to explain how each hearing will be conducted. Staff will first provide a report, on a more in-depth report on the proposal. Then those in favor of the project will be allowed to speak. Those in opposition to the project will be able to speak after all those in favor have spoken. If there are speakers in favor and opposition, each side will be given a 5-minute rebuttal period to provide rebuttal comments. Individual speakers may ask questions during their statements, but questions will not be answered until the public hearing on that item is closed. If you'd prefer, written comments may also be given to the clerk, who will provide copies to the commission. Please be respectful of others participating in the hearing by not repeating the remarks of previous speakers and presenting any new comments in a clear and concise way. I would also like to, let's see. In addition, please note 2 of the items on the public hearing portion of the agenda are items that were previously brought to this commission, and all comments that were received on items 6A and 6B at their respective commission meetings have been filed and are included in our report. With that, Mr. Coyle, would you please give us your report on item 5D?
Item 5D is General Plan Amendment Zone Change 19-0009. KFT Holdings, on behalf of Phyllis Henry, is requesting this general plan amendment and zone change. The project is located on 3.75 gross acres east of the northeast corner of the Ash Road Taft Highway intersection. The project would develop commercial uses, including a fast food restaurant with a drive-through, a gas station with convenience store, and various retail building pads. The general plan amendment request would change the land use designation from rural residential to general commercial on 3.75 gross acres. The zone change request would change the zone district from agriculture to a combined regional commercial planned commercial development zone on 3.75 gross acres. Excuse me. Staff has concluded that the project is consistent with surrounding development, the general plan, and the zoning ordinance. Staff recommends 1, adopting the mitigated negative declaration, and 2, approving the general plan amendment and zone change. This concludes my staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Coyle. The public hearing on this item is open. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the project? If so, please step to the microphone and identify yourself and proceed. Would you? Yeah. Are you? Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi.
My name is Yvette Clarke, and my home is on the corner, well, it's on Tonset, which my backyard is on next to that field. That's vacant at this point. My concern is that
I'm sorry, just to clarify, are you in favor of the project or opposed to the project?
I really don't know exactly what the project is entailing until the planning commissioner here just spoke.
Okay.
So it's not that I'm not in favor, but I have concerns.
Okay.
And so with the I don't know if I can address that at this time.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Egger, would you prefer it in the opposition just because that's usually the clarifying portion?
Yeah,
of it?
I think if you have concerns, it's probably best saved for the opposition portion.
Okay, I will
Yeah.
do that. Thank you.
But if you'd like, you're welcome to sit in the front so that you don't have to kind of Commissioner Bell, yeah. But is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the project? Please come to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
Hi, my name is Ankush Kamboj, and I actually represent KFT Holdings. I just want to thank the chair and the committee for letting me speak today, and also those concerned. In the area, we have understood that there, there would be concerns regarding, possible issues with other individuals that were around the neighborhood and some of their fears, and we'd kind of like to alleviate some of those. We've had another station that has developed near or around large residential areas with some agriculture. Initially, there were some individuals who were unhappy. However, once we actually got in and were able to make our development, we have seen, just because of the community outreach, that people were actually very happy that we are there. In our stations, we generally have a larger footprint, about 4,000 to 5,000 square feet, but also have multiple food options, and a lot of times actually end up giving back to the community and discounting, especially with teachers, students, and throwing fundraisers as well. So we feel, especially with the soccer park nearby, that we would be an added addition to the community, and obviously we would embrace everybody in the community and any ideas or other concerns that they have to try to alleviate them. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the project? Seeing no additional speakers in favor, I will now move to opposition and questions. Thank you.
Okay, once again, my name is Yvette Clarke. I live at 9607 Tonset Street, which my backyard is directly up against that field. The concerns that I have, number one, is the magnet that the gas station, the fast food, and other shops will bring congestion and traffic to that area. But primarily, my main concern is the homelessness we have in Bakersfield. The park that is adjacent to the street pretty much now is unaffected by homelessness, but wherever there is a place such as an eatery or a gas station or other types of parcels such as that, it brings that, it invites it, especially around a park. Our fences are now probably about 6.5 feet high, and the way that the developer designed our fences, our backyard fences, is all the good neighbor faces our property. We have all bad neighbor fencing on the back side, which consists of 3 slats where somebody could use that as a ladder to enter into our backyards. If this building was to take place, I would ask the developer to erect a brick wall around the backyards that face that property. I realize that development is something that you can't keep from happening, whether it's residential or whether it's commercial. But I think for safety reasons, that should be considered. And that's all.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak in opposition? Thank you. Could you please state your name?
My name is Gordon Knipp. I am the vice chair of the local Sierra Club chapter. I live in Bakersfield. I wrote letters on this project and on 2 other projects on tonight's agenda, GPA 19-0158 and GPA zone change 19-0035. And the issue is basically the same on all 3 of these from my point of view. And so what I say here now, so that I don't have to get up and say the same thing 2 more times, I would like my oral testimony at this point to be put into the record of those other 2 projects, if that's okay. But I'll let the letters that I wrote on this and the other project speak for themselves. particularly for the CEQA issues. But I would like to talk a little bit about putting electric vehicles, EVs, the charging stations in these projects. Based on overwhelming scientific evidence, the state of California is moving towards an inevitable transition away from the use of fossil fuels. A transition that'll have profound impacts here in Kern County, since 80% of the oil produced in California comes from Kern County. Transition is going to be focused here. The state has already placed a moratorium on new permits for high-pressure steam injections in California oil fields. They've added additional layers of scrutiny for permitting of frac jobs in the state, and there's a likelihood of other new regulations. The transition away from the use of fossil fuels is beginning to happen. To forestall potential economic catastrophe, the city should be making plans now to address the impacts of this transition, while there's still time to think it through and to take effective action. Economists quoted in the Bakersfield Californian have noted that the demand side of the transition must be addressed, starting with an escalation of construction of electric vehicle, EV, infrastructure. There are 3 new gas station projects on tonight's agenda, this being one of them. Each of these projects should be required to include electric vehicle, EV, fast charging stations, as well as solar panels to generate the clean electricity necessary for the project. If there's any hope of addressing the climate crisis and of tackling our dreadful air pollution, we must reduce transportation emissions. And EVs, charged from the sun, have no such emissions. In addition, as fossil fuel vehicles are phased out, they almost certainly will be replaced by EVs, electric vehicles, which even now are superior in many ways. No air pollution, great acceleration, great handling. You don't have to do any smog checks. You don't have to do oil changes. There's no oil. Service stations which can service EVs are going to have a leg up on the future. Those that don't serve EVs are going to be obsolete. Beginning December 11, the California Energy Commission is offering grants to fund construction of EV charging stations. $5.25 million, $5.25 million of grants directed right here in Kern County. These grants could potentially totally defray the cost of constructing electric vehicle fast charging stations at these projects. Fortuitously, KernCog is holding a workshop on these grants tomorrow. What they call an electric vehicle charging station funding and project assistance workshop. And I would urge the city and this project, and the city in particular via this project and other projects, to take advantage of this great grant opportunity. I have a flyer for the workshop that I'd like to enter into the record. Maybe, does it show up on here? If I put it on here?
Yes, we can turn that on.
It may be of interest for folks to see this. I'm not sure that it's readable at that point. Anyway, I will enter this into the record, and I hope this gets entered into the record of these other 2 projects as well. And if the developers are interested, I have copies of these as well. As EVs become more popular, a project's charging stations could serve as an attractor. And what I'm pointing out is that this gas station project ought to have electric vehicle charging stations. And as electric vehicles become more popular, these charging stations could serve as an attractor. EV drivers would be using the project's restaurant or market as their vehicle charges for half an hour. The owners of the charging stations make money. The restaurant and market owners have new business. The air is cleaner, the planet breathes easier, and with a grant to fund it, it wouldn't cost the developer. Everybody wins, nobody loses. Why not have charging stations at these gas stations? I urge you to take advantage of these millions of dollars of grants and to add an effective EV fast charging station requirement, or at least some sort of an incentive to these projects. And I thank you for your consideration. I'd like to add this into the record.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, please respect his request and include his comments in the 3 items listed. We'll go ahead and go. Thank you. Yep. With that, are there any other speakers wishing to speak in opposition to the project? Please state your name and proceed.
Hey, excuse me. My name's Carol Robb, and I'm a professor who teaches environmental psychology. And I wrote a snail mail letter last week, which I hope was received, with objections to the 5D project. But I'd like to echo everything Gordon said about the bigger picture of the climate emergency and that we should not be doing business as usual with the fossil fuels. For the particular parcel at 5D, I listed a variety of objections. I was not able to access what the plans were. So again, I didn't, like the other speaker, I didn't know what was going on there until just now. So I referred to it in my letter as a strip mall. I was assuming it was going to be a strip mall. And from the characteristics of it, I would say it is going to be a strip mall. It's just going to be a small strip mall. So my objections were we don't have more need for strip mall sprawl, where we have strip malls on essentially every major intersection and sometimes more than one. That installs more drive-tos and drive-throughs. Fast food and the local diabetes problem is horrible. We are choking on single-use plastics that are very much generated by sites like this and then either just thrown on the ground or sent to the landfill. These sites add to light pollution, which is harmful to humans and other animals. More pavement adds to the heat island effect. I live about a mile and a half east of that site and am not yet in the midst of the concrete and asphalt that the rest of the city is. So my place is usually about 4 degrees cooler than it is in town in the summertime. And the more we add to the heat island effect, the worse people's health problems become, as well as agricultural problems and so forth. And I have also seen federally listed endangered species, San Joaquin kit foxes, on that site, not frequently, but about 3 times in the last 2 years. I'm frequently driving past that site at night or in the pre-dawn hours, and I'm very much aware of what a kit fox looks like, so I'm sure of those sightings of kit foxes there. Lastly, in my letter, I noted that the most beautiful tree in Bakersfield is on that site, and I really... Okay, I would like to know what mitigations are planned for that site. If there's been a declaration with mitigation, I don't think we've heard yet what those mitigations are. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers in opposition? Please state your name and proceed.
Hello, good evening. My name is Eileen Warren. I am a homeowner in Mountain Gate. There are several issues that have come up regarding this project. Most importantly, that this project is inconsistent with the Metropolitan Bakersfield General Plan. It is less than 5 acres, being 3.75, I believe. 3.75 acres. There is another commercial site that is connected to the Bakersfield soccer field. You see the large light green parcel and then the zone commercial below it in pink. That we would definitely like to see that developed before anything else. When we originally moved into Mountain Gate, we saw that this was going to be potentially developed. And, you know, it would be nice, walk across the street, it's easily accessible for the kids playing at the park. So when he was talking about the representative from, was it KTF? KFT, I'm sorry, excuse me. Speaking of people coming over from the soccer park, you definitely have an access issue. How are they going to walk over? There's no crosswalks. You're cutting in front of people's homes in the agricultural corner at Taft Highway and Ash. There are homes that are right there. So my home is directly to the north, and that would be lot, let's see, 532-42609. So our back fence is a wood fence, and once again, it does have the three wooden rungs, so we're worried about somebody climbing over the back of our fence anyway. There would have to be a wall there or something a little bit more substantial. Also, commercial development policy number 24, you are encouraging clustering. You have C1, you have the gas station going in at the catty corner from the soccer park, the commercial area. And I mean, you're having gas stations there. You're having how many homes surrounding, 12 homes surrounding this field? And I'm glad somebody the woman brought up the tree. There is a huge white owl in that tree. It's beautiful. And we do see kit foxes every single night. They are endangered, San Joaquin Valley endangered species. We're worried about an increased presence in homelessness, transient activities that always has a negative effect on the community, including criminal activity, panhandling, I hate to say it, public defecation, litter. There is a residential property and homes adjacent on 3 sides of the project. Lighting, alleyways, operational noise, deliveries will severely impact the quality of those, impact the quality of life of those homeowners who live adjacent to the property for which changes are sought. Commercial development at this location is not compatible with existing residential developments. I also had a question. I don't know if anyone can answer. We were told that the remaining the back 50 feet of our property, there's a setback that is zoned agricultural. Is that something that can be answered?
After your comments, we'll have a period of questions, and then we can, in the rebuttal, if you'd like to say something in it.
That's definitely a question we have. We were told from the beginning that we could not build any type of permanent structure in the back of our property because of that setback. So I want to know, what will happen with that for sure. We're building a shed back there right now, and it would have been nice if we would have been able to build, a nice concrete slab. So just questions like that. As far as we're concerned, there's already enough designated commercial property in this area. The Bakersfield Sports Complex has that designated commercial property at Ash Road and Taft Highway. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Before we move to the rebuttal, this is a time for commissioners to ask questions of the public or staff. Please remember this is not the time to give opinion or express thoughts on the matter, just ask questions. Would any commissioners like to start? All right, Commissioner Lomas, first out of the gate. Okay, Commissioner Coleman.
Could get my button, thank you. These are a couple of questions for staff mostly. In the past, when we've done these projects, we required masonry walls around the property. Is that included in the proposal?
Yes, there's a requirement for a 6-foot block wall between commercial and residential uses. So
Okay.
that is a requirement.
All right. The second question has to do with that, with the tree on the site. Is there any, has any accommodation been made for that tree that they're referring to? Has that been considered in our land use? This may be for the developer.
Can I speak to you about the tree?
I'm sorry?
The tree, I'd like to speak about the tree. It's my
Okay. I don't know, that's
If
up
you-
to-
if you wouldn't mind
Commissioner
waiting.
Coleman, would you like to address the question to a member of the public? Or would you like to wait?
Are you here to answer the question about the tree?
Well, since everybody's so concerned about the tree, my father was from Arkansas. He owned that land before he passed it on to me, my sister.
Before you speak, could you please state your name and speak? into the
Helen
microphone?
Denisha.
Oh, thank you.
I'm one of the owners of the property. My sister's Phyllis Henry, and my older daughter owns it too. My father was from Arkansas, and he thinks that's God's country, but he married my mother here in Bakersfield and then stayed here. He brought back a little seedling in his suitcase back in the 60s of that tree, and he planted it. And it has grown to be huge and by some miracles survived all the years of the drought. Our home hasn't been there. It caught fire in the 1988, and since then there's been no structures there. But that tree has survived. Now, it breaks my heart to know that it's going to get removed. But we have owned this land for 60 years. My parents first, and then for over 30 years, my sister and I and daughter. And we can't keep it forever. You know, we've always, and my parents too, told us to hold on to it. It would be commercial someday. Let the area build up and the property value go up. So we have done that all these years. But it just surprises me that people care so much about that tree. I care about that tree. But things change. You know, we can't keep from selling the property and developing the property over a tree. As far as the fencing goes, it's required that that wood fencing be changed. They're going to get a block wall. They'll be much happier with the block wall than that wood fence. They'll be much happier with it not being vacant land. I mean, if they have concerns about people.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your clarity on the tree. This is really just the time for questions. If you'd like to provide comments during the public rebuttal period,
Okay.
I'd encourage that. But,
Okay, since you brought the tree up also, I wanted to clarify the tree.
Well, I appreciate the clarity on the history of the tree, and then I think Commissioner
you.
Coleman's question might have been to staff regarding the city's stance on kind of heritage trees and accommodations if trees on site are removed. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Commissioner
yes, it
Coleman?
is.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would ask Principal Planner Paul Johnson to come up and address that question for you, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
I'm sorry.
Or Mr. Johnson. Thank you. And thank you for your comment.
Chair Cater, Commissioners, Paul Johnson, Planning Department. On the tree, if this project's approved, this has a PCD overlay, and what that allows you to do is, if you want this as maybe a central feature, public feature, that's something that you could require when we come back with the development. Because the development will be coming back for your review.
So this is just a zone change, that we'll still have an opportunity to review the plan prior to any tentative map?
That's correct, yes, and at that time, we'll look at development standards on the block wall, the lighting, and so on and so forth.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And can we have a talk about the charging stations and whether the developer is willing to include those in his project?
Might
Well,
stray from question, is that?
That's a question.
I guess
That was a question.
Yeah.
the city doesn't have anything in our regulations to compel a developer to put in electric vehicle charging stations or solar panels. So that would have to be a discussion between the developer and whoever was requesting that feature.
Mr. Coleman, was your question to the developer or was it to the city?
Well, the question was really, it was to the developer whether he's willing to do that.
Well, and
You-
the other
You
thing,
you can answer questions if they're asked.
while he's approaching the podium,
Thank you, Mr. Coyle.
I would also like to inform the Planning Commission that I will personally be attending tomorrow's 1:30 workshop at Kern Cog on EV station funding. So we are going to go and learn about how this works, and hopefully we can incorporate that in the way that the city does business in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coyle.
So to the developer, can you say your name again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's Ankush Kamboch.
Okay, thank you. So you've heard the discussion about charging stations, and you've heard that we can't compel you to do it. But what's your thought on it? I see gas stations all over town converting to those or adding them.
Yeah, and actually that's a big issue in the industry overall as well. I think the industry realizes that there is a need to add EV as part of the program, and obviously somebody who grew up in Bakersfield who was around a lot of these gas stations, I've noticed that that's been a big hindrance as well. So I'm very glad that that was brought up as a concern. Currently for one of our other locations, we're actually working with Electrify America, which is by VW. They're actually looking at our site as a potential EV spot for one of our current builds. So actually we were planning on also reaching out to them to go ahead and make a charging station on our parcel right over there. If they feel that it doesn't fit their needs in terms of traffic, we were also planning on reaching out to ChargePoint. And they're another company who we were actually planning on adding spots to on the parcel. In terms of solar panels, we 100% agree. We're actually in the process of working with a contractor on our other location to also incorporate solar panels, and we'll probably use the same contractor if this is approved to do that on there as well. We want to try the best we can to be obviously as environmentally conscious as we can, with the project. And we know that, with the changes that are going on in the automotive industry, especially when it comes to electric vehicles, we want to be on the forefront of that.
I'm sorry, thank you. Mr. Johnson, is this a discussion, again, that's better left to the tentative map discussion at a later point?
It's Paul Johnson. That would be better left to when we come back with the PCD plan, and you guys, or your commission can look at all the development at that time.
So we can apply those conditions or those agreements at that point?
That would be applicable then, yes.
All right. Thank you. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman. Commissioner Lomas.
I believe my questions are to staff. Do you have any insight as to the adjacent commercial properties, particularly the one, not just the commercial property, but the property directly to the west? Do we know anything about that?
I do not.
You know nothing, and so it's different ownership, and we've had no contact with that owner to know his intent.
Not to the best of my knowledge, no.
Thank you. How about the across Ash to the west, the large commercial designation?
The C1,
Mm-hmm.
I am not aware of who owns that either.
To the west.
I believe she's referring to the
The C2
To the
PCD.
C2 directly to the west, and then I will ask again to the south.
One to the west is ours.
Right. What's the city's intent?
I'm hearing from Commissioner Coyle, or Planning Director Kevin Coyle, we may not know the city's intent at that point, but it's future commercial. I think that's all that we can say at this point.
How large is that parcel? Ballpark.
.43 acres.
And then to the south, you've heard nothing on that owner's intent on that commercial property to the south?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lomas. I have a couple questions for staff. One is just a verification of my assumption of the 50-foot setback that was mentioned. Can staff confirm that that is regards to an adjacent agricultural zone, and what happens to that setback once a property changes from agriculture to a commercial use?
Yes, again, Paul Johnson. That setback is for the R1, the residential, so it's not too close to ag property. If this is converted to C2 PCD, then they would have a 5-yard setback instead of 50. Or 5
Sorry,
foot,
5 foot.
5 foot
Okay.
rear yard setback, yes.
Rear yard, okay. So that would, yep. And I'm curious, zooming in a little bit, kind of echoing Commissioner Lomas, the adjacent parcel to the west is, and then, you know, traditionally we have kind of a 5-acre threshold for commercial parcels, and so a parcel that is not, that is adjacent to an agriculture zone and smaller than the 5-acre typical minimum. Can you explain the city's stance on that?
Yes, and that was addressed on page 5 in the staff report. The proposed project is not contiguous to parcels designated as general commercial. However, it is in the vicinity of several parcels that have been noted as commercial. The closest, I believe, is 500 feet away, so it just seems that that is a logical extension of a commercial area.
And is it this, as areas transition in the general plan from, you know, agricultural use to more intense land use, is it kind of standard protocol to leave these islands of agriculture lingering until an applicant requests otherwise?
I believe that is the case.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioner questions before we move to rebuttals? Okay, seeing no additional questions at this time, I will now open the rebuttal period. Let me look at my notes to make sure I am running it in a conducive manner. This period is a rebuttal period, 5-minute total time for all speakers. We will first provide 5 minutes of rebuttal comments for those in favor of the project. Please be succinct and respectful of others because it is a 5-minute total time. After we have those in favor, we will again have a 5-minute period for those in opposition to the project to provide 5 minutes of rebuttal comments, at which point we will close the public hearing and move to commissioner comments and action. With that, those in favor of the project, if you'd like to come and provide rebuttal period or rebuttal comments, please come to the front, identify yourself, proceed, and for the sake of time, if there are multiple speakers, please don't hesitate to come to the front and sit in the front row. Thank you. With that, Madam Clerk, would you please start the clock on rebuttal for those in favor of the project?
Hi, my name is Jasveer Barar. I'm a broker representing this project. We strongly believe, and we are definitely concerned, as the developer himself said, that he will definitely agree with the Sierra Club request if it approved. And we definitely want to assure the neighborhood that, you know, these developers have a couple of stations, and they will work with it. Not only that, this project will bring much needed job to Kern County as well as the revenue, much needed revenue to the county if it's approved. And I think I just want to assure the neighborhood, I live in the neighborhood myself, and if the Sierra Club gentlemen, and I think I strongly believe their intention is right, you know, they're protecting our future. But as far as the neighborhood, I live myself in the neighborhood, and I want to assure you that this project not going to be a cut corner. It will still be supervised by the PCD hearing when we come back to building permit. So I ask all of you guys to consider the overall the permission, because I'm one of the neighbors that lives in that area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jacob Cornejo, Paul Dan's architect. I just want to touch base real quick on the fact that I know right now all we're doing is talking about the GPA and the zone change. But as far as development goes, as far as right now, we have no intent of actually constructing a drive-through restaurant. There will be a large convenience store with a QSR inside, but as far as a drive-through restaurant detached from the convenience store, that is not the case. Also, I wanted to touch base on the fact that the future expansion and development of Taft Highway to a 6-lane expressway in the future. I think this is a pretty strategic place to be located for a convenience store and a gas station. We're still trying to work out the kinks for future development for the rest of the parcel. But again, this is sort of to cater not only the neighborhood, but also people traveling on the future parkway, connecting 99 to I-5. Another thing regarding the EV charging stations, the building code does require a certain percentage based on required parking per city ordinance to develop future charging stations. Like my client did say, he does want to go above and beyond that and actually install them thank you.
Thank you.
Coach Cambodge again, just one last comment. I just wanted to actually address the homelessness issue. This is an issue we take very seriously. We've had it at multiple of our C-stores. We do agree it is a large problem, not just in the C-store industry, but throughout Bakersfield. A big thing that we actually do, a big priority we actually place on, customer safety. We want to make sure that we are taking some precautions to make sure that the homelessness situation around the store isn't affecting customers, but also affecting their safety of their family and everybody else who comes in. So we do take some measures in terms of playing music, monitoring the area, and then also just circling back to, I believe there was a comment about possible pollution due to some of the products from the QSR. We actually take our recycling very seriously on our end too. So we are actually transitioning in our current QSR inside to paper products, for example, that are inside. We also do have specific wastage containers for perishable foods that are wasted properly. So we are trying to be as on top of it as possible and environmentally as conscious as possible in our stores. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 20 seconds remaining if you'd like to make comments. Yeah, sorry.
I think a lot of the people maybe living in the Lenore Tract Mountain Gate behind the property don't realize at this time that that's going to be a 6-lane highway. A lot of that land for that highway has come off of my side of the road.
Okay.
And more is we're willing to dedicate to provide extra landscaping. Almost the entire corner parcel is going to be landscaping.
I'm sorry, it's a 5-minute total time, and we went over 3 seconds, and I'm being told I can't go over anymore. Sorry.
Oh, so I don't get to speak anymore?
I'm sorry. That's yep.
Okay.
But thank you. 5-minute total time. I'm sorry.
Okay, because I love Shashi. He has built beautiful projects.
All right. Well, thank you. We will now move on to rebuttal period. As we just learned, this is a 5-minute total time. So if there are speakers, please come to the front. We will have 5 minutes of rebuttal for those in opposition to the project. Who's in the front? I don't make the rules. I just have to enforce them. So with that, we will begin the clock on 5-minute rebuttal period for those in opposition. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Gordon Knipp again with the Sierra Club. I just want to say that I'm pleased that the developer is planning to put in EV charging stations. That I think is an idea whose time has come, and it's a no-brainer. I mean, it's something that's going to make money for the project. And it is an idea whose time has come, and I would suggest that the city really needs to kind of jump on board with this idea and come up with some kind of a policy that applies to all new projects of this sort. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Hello. I just wanted to touch real quickly. The current proposal of the zone change is a lot of, very wide parameters, and even though they say we could build this or we could build this, my thought is, what if there's a restaurant? What if there's a bar, a strip club? I mean, it's pretty wide. I just moved from being at the end of, or in the middle of a street where there was a popular restaurant. We left because we were getting baby diapers, beer cans. We even had a fight in our driveway one night. The couple of the things that she was asking that nobody knew, one of the residents to the west, no intentions of leaving, does not want this project. The southwest corner is up for sale. Right now, Pumpkin Center is just down the road, and businesses are constantly opening and closing. So if they can't sustain their businesses, why would this be something that would be so profitable? They were pushing, wouldn't it be great for the kids at the soccer park to be able to go over here and get some fast food, yada, yada. If you've lived in Bakersfield long enough, Taft Highway is deadly. There's people dying on there all the time, and I don't think we want kids crossing the street to go get fast food, especially when there's that adjacent lot that they've already said that that's what they're going to build there. I don't think that this belongs smack dab in the middle of residential where it's, surrounded by residents on 3 sides. Thank you.
My thought was basically the same as the lady who just spoke. 3 sides, residential, this commercial property jammed in between that, when there are already proposed parcels that are going to incorporate those types of businesses. Going from, I wasn't aware that Taft Highway was going into a 6-lane highway. So going from a 6-foot fence, maybe we need a 10-foot fence, because it's going to be more noise, more traffic, and more foot traffic, cars. It's going to really impact our quality of life being in our backyards or up against that fence. So I would recommend that if this does get approved, that we do get at least a 10-foot fence. Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm also one of the homeowners at the Mountain Gate community. Before I go into any further, I would like to ask the owners of that property who are considering developing the property, how would you like a commercial property right next to your home? And I pose the same question to the commissioners as well. Have you ever considered purchasing a residential unit? Considered yourself, that it's going to be your permanent home. How would you like to have a commercial development right next to your home? And in the United States, a home purchase is considered as a social upward mobility. And with that hope, we purchased this home, knowing, hoping that there would not be any commercial developments, and our children could have some good time in the backyard. But now there would be this development. The probability of transient population, the noise levels increasing, not to mention the obnoxious smells from all the trash that'll be thrown around, and the increased crimes. So we request that the owners consider, if they're interested in bringing revenue to the county, they should certainly consider developing a different property. We're
running out of time. So.
I know, we are. We're close there. Okay. Thank you. And I second that request of 10-foot wall if it's going commercial. Thank you.
All right. I will call time. Okay, I will now close the public hearing and return to commissioners for comment and action. And I think Commissioner Lomas was the first to push the button.
I'll just cut right to it. We have a very long agenda, and I know other people are waiting to have their item heard. I don't support this at all. And I'll name for the following reasons. Mainly, we don't know what's going to happen to the west. If this parcel, so I believe this is premature. If the parcel to the west was a part of this project, then I might look at it differently. But it's being proposed as a gas station with access to a highway at only 3.75 acres. And admittedly, it's under the minimum 5 acres that the city would like to see. So just the sheer volume of cars moving in and out on a 6-lane road makes no sense to me. If you're at a corner, you've got another place to drop out. You can drop out over on Ash. My other reason is we can all see it. There's 60 acres of commercial. There's plenty of commercial there. I don't see a need. So when we're considering as a commission, we're considering a zone change, need has to be first and foremost. That's it. I think for those very good reasons, I'm not supportive of this.
Are there any other commissioner comments? Okay, may I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to deny.
May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Commissioners, please cast your vote. A vote for is a vote to deny, right? Good. Just to clarify. It's not popping up. The second is Commissioner Bowers. My apologies. We're in it for a long meeting, and I'm already getting a little sloppy. Not yet.
Is it still not showing up on your
Not
screen?
showing up. So could we do a roll call vote, just because
Yeah,
we
we
have
can
quite
do
a
roll
bit
call
of
vote.
stuff to discuss tonight?
Sure.
All right.
Commissioner Cater,
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman,
Yes, sorry.
Commissioner Bowers,
Yes.
Commissioner Lomas,
Yes.
Commissioner Wade.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to item 5E. Just to clarify for the audience, a yes vote was a vote to deny the project.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. All right. Mr. Coyle, are we ready to, we have a few more agenda items to cover before we have to go to work tomorrow morning. So let's hear your staff report on item 5E, please. Thank you.
The next project, 5E, is a general plan amendment 19-0158. Swanson Engineering, on behalf of Dave Lout, FBT Group, Inc., is requesting general plan amendment 19-0158. The project is located on 2.31 acres at 7301 South Union Avenue, on the southeast corner of South Union Avenue and Berkshire Road intersection. The project proposes a 5,000 square foot convenience store with a 2-pump truck fueling area and a 12-pump automobile fuel canopy. The current proposal is a cleanup to remedy an inconsistency between the current land use designation and zoning classification. The general plan amendment request would change the land use designation from low-density residential to general commercial on 2.31 acres. Staff has concluded that the project is consistent with surrounding development and the general plan. Staff recommends 1, adopting the notice of exemption, and 2, approving the general plan amendment. This concludes my staff report.
Thank you. At this time, the public hearing on item 5E is now open. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the project? If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
Thank you very much, Chairman Cater, Planning Commissioners. I'm Bob Swanson, Swanson Engineering, representing Dave Lout. The project here is not an approval of the development that gets held till later when we submit site plan review. For now, the project involves a general plan amendment to make the general plan consistent with the current zoning of C2. There's additional C2 properties along Union Avenue, along with industrial properties. For Mr. Knipp's comments about charging stations, number one, I'll say we'll comply with all California building codes, which govern that right now. And as a concession, I will let the owner know of his concerns and I'll say the availability. We'll look into the availability of the grants to put in charging stations when the development does come in as a project. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the project? If so, please step to the microphone and identify yourself and proceed. Seeing no other speakers in favor, are there any members of the audience wishing to speak in opposition? Please note Mr. Knipp's comments will also be filed under this project unless you have anything else to add to this particular item. Are there any speakers in opposition? Seeing no speakers in opposition, commissioners, do you have any questions for staff or the public on this item? Okay, seeing no additional questions, and as there were no opposition comments, we will not hold a rebuttal period, and I will close the public hearing on this item and move to commissioners for comment and action. Or a motion. Commissioner Coleman?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve staff recommendations regarding item 5E, general plan amendment number 19-0158.
Commissioner Coleman and may I have a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Bowers. Commissioners, please cast your votes.
Motion passes with Rudnick and Bell absent.
Thank you. Motion approved. We will now move on to item 5, the public hearing on item 5F. Mr. Coyle, would you please prepare your staff report? Or please provide your staff report. Hopefully it's already prepared. Yeah. Yes.
Could you bring up the presentation, please? Okay, commissioners.
Thank you.
The draft ordinance you have before you this evening started out as a referral from Council Member Freeman on April 10th, 2019 at City Council. And there was a request for the Planning and Development Committee to consider applying large retail development standards to all retail throughout the city. We presented at the July 9th Planning and Development Committee meeting, and the first thing we talked about was the definition of large retail in the code at Chapter 1704.367. And that definition for large retail is basically anything over 50,000 square feet of gross floor area. It also applies not only in all commercial districts, but any non-residential district that would have a commercial retail component. We looked at the design standards. There are currently 6 design standards in code. We did some research with comparable cities as to what they did relative to large and/or small retail. And then there were also some considerations like the increased cost perhaps to a developer to comply with higher standards, as well as thresholds for where these standards would apply, whether it was lot size, the size of the individual buildings versus total buildings. We then also met with some local architects to discuss our proposal with them. And as Chair Cater may appreciate, the discussion was what makes a lot of architects happy when you're talking about textures and elevations and colors. But generally, the architects were very supportive of requiring higher standards throughout the city of Bakersfield. I saw the Sound of Something Better brand up there earlier, and you can kind of apply that something better to a lot of things. And it looks like with some recent activity by City Council, they are looking at making a better Bakersfield. For instance, better landscape standards. Now we're addressing the built form in terms of commercial land use activity. And the architects basically felt that requiring higher standards would have a minimal cost and would be relatively easy to comply with. So we looked for a couple of bad examples and good examples that we might be able to apply in this case. So this first project would fall under the bad category in that there is little to no change in colors or textures or materials in this building, and you only see a little bit of roof line variation at the 2 ends of the building. Another example of bad design is this particular project on the west side of Coffee Road near Fuego's Bar and Grill. I believe that River Lakes Drive is to the north, a road called Kapalua Lane to the south. This is a project where the buildings back up to the street, and so you don't have a very good street presence here with these buildings, and there's minimal landscaping, so this got a thumbs down. This got a thumbs up. It's the plaza at Union and Chester. And if we zoomed in a little on the lower picture, you would see that there are variations in the facades, in the roof line. You've got better landscaping. And the final example of design, and in this case it's representing good design. This is at the Northwest Promenade, and you have variations in building materials, variations in textures, you have projections and recesses. The landscaping is very good. So I think this is sort of the ideal that we're aiming for. So in terms of the text amendments you have before you, for the full ordinance, we basically removed the word large everywhere. We removed the word large from the definition, and we also struck the over 50,000 square feet as part of that definition. And then we looked at those design standards that I had mentioned earlier. And in order to accommodate smaller projects, we did make some concessions, if you will, for them in that certain wall improvements aren't needed if a building is less than 50 feet long. Entryway requirements don't kick in until the project area is 5 or more acres or 50,000 square feet of gross floor area or more. We made some other exceptions in terms of parking. If the minimum required parking is less than 50 spaces, you wouldn't have to comply. Pedestrian circulation would apply on parcels of 5 acres or more, or projects involving 50,000 square feet of gross floor area or more. And then finally, central features and community space would only be applied to projects that were more than 2.5 acres in size or more than 20,000 square feet. So our staff recommendation to the commission is to adopt the resolution approving those ordinance amendments and recommend the same to City Council. And that concludes my staff report.
Thank you. I pulled the item, but we are here to provide the public participation in the development process, so I will at first just ask if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this proposed amendment to the city's ordinance. Seeing no speakers in favor, I will also provide an opportunity for those in opposition to the ordinance to come provide comments. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to provide opposition comments? Seeing none, there are basically no comments, and so I will just close the public hearing at this time, move to commissioner comments in action. I will, as protocol, provide opportunities for other commissioners to speak before I ask my questions. Are there any commissioners that wish to talk about this item? Or is it just me? We are closed, so we are free to say whatever you'd like in a public setting. Okay, yes. Okay, I see no other commissioner comments. So my first, I would just like to acknowledge that I appreciate staff's effort on this. I think that providing retail buildings, which in a form are a public form of service to our community, there where people gather, there where people eat, there where people shop. And so I nod that the standards that we've held for larger projects are being applied to smaller projects. My question is really a specific item that I would like to discuss. And before, can I just clarify an assumption of, so parking standards for restaurants, it's 75 square feet per parking spot, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And then for general commercial, it's 200 per, is it 200 per parking stall, is that correct?
Generally, yes.
Okay, so I guess my question and what I'd like to hear commissioners' comments on is the 50,000 square foot threshold before we require pedestrian circulation to primary building entrances. I think as a city, we talk a lot about providing multiple, being inclusive of those that walk, those that take the bus, being multimodal. But the ordinance really doesn't require any pedestrian consideration as far as circulation until projects are already providing hundreds of parking spaces. And it seems to me that providing safe connections of buildings to one another, safe connections to public right-of-ways is a threshold that seems like 50,000 square feet. I understand plazas, I understand infrastructure, but it seems like pedestrian circulation, to put that at a 50,000 square foot threshold seems a little counter to trying to provide access for a diverse user groups in our city. What, staff, can you provide comments, or can I just make a motion? Or hear other commissioners? I would love to hear other commissioners' comments.
If I may, Commissioner?
Yes.
Those type of items are required by the building code, accessibility requirements for circulation around the site in between buildings, to and from the public way, to and from parking. So a lot of those general, kind of generic requirements are actually required by building code.
Yeah. So then can we strike it? Because if it's already required, then we shouldn't have an ordinance that says that it's not required until 50,000 square feet. Is that right? I mean, it's, yeah. Mr. Agger?
I'm going to review a copy real quick and then see what that language specifically.
Can we take a 5-minute break and you guys can get back? Thank you. All right, if we could reconvene, we will continue the conversation.
So to answer your question, the proposed ordinance is above and beyond the standard accessibility pedestrian access that Mr. Archer was discussing. So if we strike these, you won't have an option to require these additional, I say, bonus features like meandering sidewalks or breaking up some of the straight line pedestrian access on these larger shopping centers. And I think these thresholds were set for shopping centers that are large enough to accommodate something like meandering sidewalks, where smaller ones that may be difficult to work in a meandering sidewalk on a 20,000 square foot commercial site.
Well, I guess I can be more specific, because and Mr. Archer, correct me if I'm wrong, the code requires that from a public right-of-way to a point of entry, there's an accessible path, and it requires that from accessible spaces, there's a path to the entrance of the building. So really what we're discussing is the interconnectivity between different buildings on site. Is that correct?
Code also requires some interconnectivity.
They do require interconnectivity.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So then I think I'm not asking for all of the items to be struck. I believe the nature of meandering, the nature of fountains, the nature of plazas, I agree that that is something that requires potentially more area. I'm particularly looking at the item E2, which just describes the need for internal pedestrian walkways no less than 6 feet in width. That the language in red there that says for projects exceeding 50,000 square feet of gross floor area and or 5 acres of net buildable area be struck. I believe I would be fine with meandering walkways along the sidewalk being held to a higher threshold. You know, the things that are a little bit more, like Mr. Iger had said, space contingent. So my particular motion would be that just item E2, that the minimum size requirement be struck from that and it be required for retail projects.
That also includes things like focal points and including shrubs, benches, flower beds, ground covers, and other ones. So I just want to...
If I might... So let me just direct the commissioners to page 7 of the 12-page staff report. Sorry. I'll give you a time to scroll on the iPad. And I'll just read it out. So the way this particular item reads is for projects exceeding 50,000 square feet of gross floor area and or 5 acres of net buildable area, continuous internal pedestrian walkways no less than 6 feet in width shall be provided from a public sidewalk or right-of-way to the principal customer entrance of all large retail developments on the site, including all freestanding pad buildings. Pedestrian walkways shall link all the buildings in the development. At a minimum, walkways shall connect focal points of pedestrian activity, such as but not limited to transit stops, street crossings, buildings, and store entry points, and shall feature adjoining landscaped areas that include trees, shrubs, benches, flower beds, ground covers, or other such materials for no less than 50% of the length of the walkway. Use of decorative arbors, freestanding arcades, or weather protection structures is permitted. So the way I read that is there's a requirement for landscape. There's not a requirement for structures, arbors, fountains, anything that is more in character with a larger development. And I would again say adjacent landscaping. We require landscaping at every 6 or actually even more parking spaces. So we already require landscaping in parking lots, so why would we not want to see it next to a pedestrian way? And then that would just be my... Yeah, I'd just like to drop the 50,000 and make it a requirement of retail development. But I'm curious on other commissioners' thoughts.
So,
Mr. Archer?
The accessibility requirement doesn't necessarily require sidewalks. You could have accessible passive travel through parking lots. And I think that this goes, like you said, above and beyond the generic accessibility requirements, requiring 6-foot sidewalks, requiring landscaping, and items like that. So.
And I agree. I mean, the whole conversation is about enhanced retail developments that exceed code minimum for buildings to be structurally sound. So I would just be interested in others' thoughts, and I would like to have a motion to strike the size requirement, but I'm curious on other commissioners' thoughts. Sorry. Okay. Oh, Commissioner Thomas, please proceed. Sorry. You have not officially pushed your request to speak button.
Okay, well, it's boring just watching us. Forgive us while we're trying to sort through this. Commissioner Coleman and I both were able to attend the planning and development meeting that the council members put this thing together, and we're really excited. I think I can speak for you. Yeah. We're really excited to see that we are looking at enhancing Bakersfield. And I give a lot of credit to Councilmember Freeman, who led the charge on this. So I'm not quite sure I'm understanding where you're coming from. You're talking about just pedestrian within, and I'm not understanding where staff, where you're standing on this, in that, are you seeing that item number 2, just dropping that 50,000, trickles to other pieces here?
Correct. If you have smaller properties with less structure on there and you're requiring 6-foot sidewalks with landscaping and those types of requirements, it may be too much of a burden for
on a 5
Exactly.
on a 5 acre, on something under 5 acres.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But again, though, I would state that I think...
I'm sorry.
I would just state, as I would just also clarify for staff, the code requirement, based on Mr. Archer and my understanding of it, is that the circulation path is required, but the path can be through vehicular traffic. Is that correct? And so this would be really, do we want to define pedestrian access points or up to that threshold, or is it, right?
It requires an accessible route, which means that an individual in a wheelchair can maneuver between the buildings.
Well, I'm at a loss because I just told everybody I don't like projects under 5 acres, so I'm not quite sure.
Well, that's probably a good point.
I'm going to hand that to you because we're talking about 5 acres. Yeah, I'm going to step back on this one.
Okay.
I do think pedestrians should be safe.
Okay. All right. Oh, you're speaking. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I think the last project that we looked at on Taft Highway is a good example of that because, you know, and I'm concerned about this exemption for these small projects, especially when they abut bigger projects. So you could have a situation where you have a 5-acre parcel up against a 3-acre parcel, and they're both zone commercial, and you'd have one functioning at one standard and the other one not. And so I struggle with that. And I get it that the smaller the parcel, the harder it is to comply with some of these things. But I think things like landscape for sure and accessibility shouldn't be ones that we discount.
I would maybe looking at item F, we are stating in this new ordinance that central features and community space need to be provided at shopping centers that are 20,000 square feet or 2.5 acres or less, or 2.5 acres or larger. And to me, it seems like providing community gathering space that, enhance pedestrian access to the entrance of the building seems like it's less burdensome than a community feature or a gathering space. And so, I would also be willing to modify my ask and motion that we, instead of the 50,000 threshold, put a 20,000 threshold on it in a 2.5 acre for those small projects that are really a gas station or are, a fast food restaurant. Is that staff?
It's at your discretion. It's, if you guys make that motion to change the ordinance and make the recommendation to city council, that's up to you guys.
Okay. Staff, could you provide opinion? I think commissioners are requesting opinion of staff. Do you have a specific, just on general?
They know the ins and outs of, is this doable or not? I'd have to defer to the architect and staff if it's a reasonable request.
I think Mr. Archer has been very eloquent about how building looks at this. Planning, our concern was the burden on smaller projects. And
so what are your thoughts on lowering the threshold to 20,000 square feet or 2.5 acre versus getting rid of it altogether?
I think having a standard
threshold
is better, or threshold,
yeah.
yes.
We're not talking about a standard, we're talking about a threshold.
Is
Yeah.
better than no standard or threshold.
Okay. Okay, well then with that, we have a lot of members of the community wishing to speak on other public hearings, so I will make the motion. If it dies, it dies. Can I make a motion? I will make a motion to modify the language of item E2 to read, for projects exceeding 20,000 square feet of gross area and or 2.5 acres of net buildable area, and then otherwise recommend the document and say good job to staff for looking at this item. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Bowers. Commissioners, please cast your votes. Are we waiting to, oh, there we are. Thanks.
Nope, there they are. Motion passes with Commissioner Wade against.
Commissioner Coleman voted no as well, is that correct?
Yes.
Oh, it's not showing up for me, but okay.
Yeah, it's on
Okay.
Okay, next item? Okay, thank you. Mr. Coyle, would you please provide your staff report on item 6A?
Dana, could I ask you to bring up the next presentation, please? Thank you. I'd like to start off the presentation by first addressing several issues that were raised at the last public hearing on this project. The first one has to do with noticing. Now, for tonight, I believe the entire Cattle Kings Estates subdivision was notified of this project. But I think we would caution the Planning Commission on setting a precedent for expanding the notification requirement area. Staff felt that we were fully compliant with the law when we extended the notice to the people within that 300-foot radius. There's an added expense to the taxpayer mailing out notices to more and more people, staff time needed to process additional hearing notices. And there's also a personal responsibility for citizens to stay actively engaged with government. For example, one could easily go to the city's website under the government tab and meetings and agendas and the Planning Commission agenda, it's all there. The information is put online on the Friday before a Planning Commission meeting. So there are other ways for the citizenry to stay informed and engaged as part of their civic duty. There were comments made about the environmental documentation, and a mitigated negative declaration was adopted by City Council in 2004 when this project first went through a general plan amendment and zone change. The Planning Commission, and I'm not saying individuals on the Planning Commission, but the Planning Commission as a body then affirmed that mitigated negative declaration in 2007 when they initially approved the tentative tract map because there were no new environmental impacts expected. The circumstances under which the project would be undertaken was not going to change. And staff still feels that that mitigated negative declaration document is valid. In this case, according to CEQA, the project itself is just an extension of time, which we view that sort of as a paper exercise. So just the fact that you are going to extend the life of a map by 3 years, that's not going to have any effect on the environment. And the number of lots to be developed, none of that has changed. So we're still looking at the same project. All of the impacts that were evaluated back in '04 would still be those impacts today, so there's nothing new. And we feel that that environmental document is still sound. There was a question about the conditions of approval and which ones had been satisfied. Conditions of approval have to be met before final recordation of the map. Obviously, the developer is not ready to record the final map, hence the request for an extension of time. Those conditions will have to be met. Any grading plans or building permits that are applied for would have to comply with today's standards. And so, again, we think the conditions are still applicable to this project. There was some concern about requesting an extension because of an economic slowdown, and obviously we have rebounded somewhat from the Great Recession, but the Subdivision Map Act does not require a reason for requesting an extension. So typically, the reason has been because of the economic slowdown, and the state legislature responded to that economic slowdown by giving blanket extensions to maps throughout the state. So what the applicant's reason for requesting the extension isn't necessarily relevant in this case, because there is no requirement to give a reason for requesting an extension. There was also some concern about the math involved, like how many years has this project been extended, and didn't it expire 2 years ago? Well, we put together a chart. With the initial approval of the map in 2007, that initial approval is good for 3 years. And then between those 5 legislative bills, there were additional 9 years added to the 3 from the initial approval. So that's a total of 12 years, and the project was initially approved in '07, plus 12 is 2019. So they made application for extension within the time that they are required to do so. And I believe the Subdivision Map Act gives the local jurisdiction an additional 60 days beyond that expiration date to determine whether or not they're going to grant the extension. I would also note that the Subdivision Map Act says that a map can only be valid for a total of 10 years, all of these other extensions notwithstanding. The city's position is you have a 3-year initial approval, and you can apply for 2 3-year extensions. So the city's policy is you get a total of 9 years for the map, which is more conservative than the Subdivision Map Act's 10 years for the map. So staff is continuing to recommend the extension of time to November 14th, 2022. And with that, Dana, if you could switch back to the original presentation, please. Thank you. So, extension of time for vesting tentative tract map 6465. This item was heard by the Commission on November 7th and referred back to staff to be re-advertised for tonight's hearing. As requested by the Commission, public notices were sent to all property owners within Cattle King Estates. DeWalt Corporation, representing Sarah Brissa Development LLC, who is the property owner. This tentative tract map contains a total of 117.63 acres, consisting of mixed-use development of primarily single and multiple family residential, some general commercial and office lots, an open space lot, and lots for existing drill sites. Project is located on the south side of Alfred Harrell Highway, on both the east and west sides of Lake Ming Road in northeast Bakersfield. The applicant is requesting a 3-year extension for additional time due to the real estate financial slowdown. No phase of this map has recorded. During the November 7th hearing, comments from residents of the Cattle King Estates opposing the extension of time were given. In response, staff has provided a memo summarizing and responding to those comments. And basically, the intro slideshow that I showed you was that memo broken down into its various components, just in case the public had not seen a copy of our memo to the Planning Commission. The memo addresses public notice, appropriate use of a notice of exemption, adequacy of the conditions of approval, how the Subdivision Map Act provides the parameters for the city to consider extensions of time, and clarification of approval timeline for this tentative map. Staff is of the opinion that the information provided supports approval of a 3-year extension of time to expire on November 14th, 2022, with no changes to the previously approved conditions of approval. This concludes my staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Coyle. The public hearing on this item is now open. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the project? If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
Good evening. My name is Todd Wood. I'm the engineering director for DeWalt Corporation, representing Sierra Breeza Development for this project. I want to commend staff for doing a very good job kind of explaining the details of the issues that were brought up at the last hearing. And as Mr. Coyle pointed out, the issue of concern tonight is the extension of the map. The tentative map was previously approved. It was previously evaluated under CEQA. Our clients have complied with all of the city and state ordinances in order to get the map and the general plan amendment and zone changes approved. If the map was not extended, the zoning would not change. It would still be the general office, commercial, R1 and R2. So somebody could come back and do a new map. But all that would do would incur more time, a lot more expense for a project that ultimately the outcome would remain the same. The details of the tentative map that would come forward would be no different. It would be the same layout with the same zoning, and it would just take more time and more money. The housing crisis in the mid-2000s was very real. We're still seeing the effects of that today. Property values have increased, which is great for all of us who live in the city. But development still has not fully recovered from that. As a result, a lot of these projects, few that were already approved tonight for extensions of time again, there were a couple at the last hearing, the time that it takes to develop these projects is significant. A lot of effort on our part to develop these plans and to comply with all the conditions of approval. So demand is increasing. I think we have seen that. You know, houses are selling rather quick. And I think that's indicating that there's a lack of good, affordable, and upper scale housing available. They're on the market for a couple weeks and they're gone. So the demand is there. That demand is what's now making this project very feasible. And so it's time for our clients to be able to move forward with the project over the next couple of years, hopefully less. We would be engaged and ready to get the construction documents completed, submitted to the city for approval, and go to work. So we're asking for the commission for equitable consideration in regard to extending this map, and we're definitely ready to put a good faith effort together to progress this project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Please identify yourself and proceed.
Chair, Commissioners, city staff. My name is Gary Axelson. I'm one of the partners of the Sierra Breeza Development LLC. And any of the difficult questions, I want to defer to our engineer. I'm not that bright, but we do own this property. So we thank you for your attention on this matter. Out of respect for those that are opposing the project, I wanted to come here and introduce myself and address some of their concerns. Also, I wanted to confirm the letter from Pam Denny made it and is on record from our legal counsel. So, You know, the argument to extend this map, in my opinion, is pretty straightforward. Those in opposition to the extension raised issues regarding the aged environmental review, valley fever concerns, and changes in circumstances in general. However, if the commission were to consider these as valid reasons for not granting the extension, then really all projects of similar age would have to undergo the same scrutiny when asking for an extension. So my attorney wanted to make sure I use these words. It said to deny the extension for these concerns would be selective, arbitrary, and with prejudice. So we feel that this project will enhance the community and improve the neighborhood infrastructure. We ask that the commissioners approve this extension as they have with many other maps. I think last month there were 2 maps before ours with the same similar circumstances that were given an extension. So we ask that that courtesy be given to us too. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers wishing to speak in favor of the project? Seeing no additional speakers, is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to the project? If so, please step to the microphone and proceed.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Holmes. I'm a resident of Cattle King Estates, 121 Pony Express Lane. I'd like to thank the commission as well as the staff for sending out the notices to our residents regarding this project. And I'll say for another night to come back and talk about transparency with notifications. After 31 years of teaching political science and sending my students to city council meetings throughout Bakersfield and Butte County, I think there's something to be said about being notified and thinking that the general public is doing what you would want them to do. I'm here tonight to talk about the tentative track one more time. I'd like to start by reading your own goal. Our goal is to carefully consider each project and make decisions that will balance individual rights with public welfare and general well-being of the community. Now, even though they don't have to state a reason for their extension, unfortunately that has been made in the application. And that application says they are asking for an extension due to a financial downturn, as well as noted in the staff's recent report, financial issues. Nowhere in your goal does it say that you're responsible for the pocketbooks of developers. The state has made that clear with their extensions over the last 5 years. If the state still had an interest in protecting the pocketbooks of developers, they surely would have passed an additional extension. Now, with regards to the extensions that were noted by staff, your staff yourself told you that your city policy is typically a 9-year deal. We are now at 12 years, and you want to push aside literally the 10 years that the state, actually it's 9, let me refresh it, the 9 years. I'm not too sure why you can't hold true to your own policies. You want to push aside 9 years of a state and say those don't include what our traditional policies are. And that is, at the end of 9 years, we reapply. Now, with regards to theirs, there are exceptions, by the way, to the California Environmental Quality Act, which we've already talked about once before. The exceptions to the exemptions are called cumulative impact. And since the EIR was issued, you should know, because you're on the Planning Commission, that there are actually 8 active tracts of development within less than a 2-mile radius of Alfred Hills Highway and Lake Mean, the central fairway for this new development. In fact, within that 1.5 to 2 miles where those 8 tracts are, there is not literally probably 1 inch of land left that is developable that's not on a slope. And to think that something that was passed in 2004 saying there is no environmental impact and now have 7 additional projects around it to say there's not a cumulative impact without a study would be very misleading. And that is one of the reasons that we are here today, literally to ask you to deny this extension. There is a cumulative impact. There's not 1 inch of developable land that's not sloped easement available within a 2-mile radius. And take into consideration the additional homes. What type of air pollution, what type of noise pollution, what type of traffic will we be seeing on Alfred Harold Highway? I mean, the reality of it is there are roads that the city has planned, yet not yet developed. And a classic example of that is the push through of Palladino. For the last decade, we have driven down Alfred Harold Highway to see an undeveloped road, dirt, chain link fence, a mound of dirt that, by the way, when it was built, our city council member, Mike Maggard at the time, said, it's temporary. Well, 10 years is not temporary. Yeah, it's not temporary. And in fact, the other mound of dirt, if you're familiar with the Northeast, that had the great veterans monuments on it every Veterans Day, that too sat there for literally over 10 years and is now just recently being removed. It's those types of projects that we really worry about. You currently have 7 tracks. Many of them have been extended and extended and extended. Earlier tonight, I heard need first and foremost. No one has proven that there's a need. And if there is a need, those 7 tracks that have already been passed, they'd be developed. Across the street at Lakeview sit 5, 6 houses. Not one new one has been constructed in the last 3 years. Go up the street to Siena, another development started. No new houses. I'm not even too sure if Tuscany has completely built itself all the way out. If there was a need, these developments would be building. But the need is not that great. And we should not subject our community and the well-being to not having current environmental impact reports. And he's right. I'm not threatening you with a lawsuit tonight, but all these extensions that are exceeding 9 years, they should be going back to the table. Because again, your goal is to balance the individual rights, not the pocketbooks of developers, with public welfare and the general well-being of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other additional speakers wishing to speak in opposition to the project? Seeing no other additional speakers, I will open up for commissioner questions to staff and the public. Please remember this is not a time to give your opinion. Are there any questions for staff or the public? All right, seeing none, we will move into a rebuttal period as we did have those speakers in favor and speakers in opposition. I will open up 5-minute rebuttal period for those in favor of the project. Please remember, as our previous hearing, that this is a 5-minute total time, so please be respectful, be succinct, and allow everyone that wishes to speak an opportunity to do so. So with that, those in favor, would you, are there comments and rebuttal comments? If so, please come to the dais and we'll start the clock. Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please start the clock? Thank you.
Hi, Gary Axelson. It's probably obvious, but I'm an individual too. And these laws and policies and processes are in place for my protection also. And we're not some bad, ugly corporation. Some people find it compelling. We're just a family, husband and wife, father-in-law, brother. That's who Sarah Brisa LLC is. So just a family trying to get a map recorded at some point here. Appreciate your help on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers, or can we call the rebuttal time for those in favor? Are you good? Okay. Madam Clerk, yes, we'll call the time and move to rebuttal period for those in opposition to the project. If there are speakers wishing to speak in opposition, please step to the dais and we will start the clock at 5 minutes. Madam Clerk, would you please start the clock?
Again, Stephen Holmes, Cattle King Estates, 121 Pony Express Lane. I'd mentioned that there were 7 tracks currently recorded within less than a 2-mile radius of Alfred Health Highway and Lake Ming Road. The track that you're looking at today, and unfortunately we don't have the map up anymore, 6465, which is part of Sarah Brisa LLC, is a partnership, and one of our partners are with us today. And I believe a gentleman by the name of Mr. Sanders as well is part of that LLC, at least on the record it is. I just thought it would be interesting to see who was involved in the 7 additional tracks that rest within that 2-mile area. And it appears that right behind 6465 is another track, Vista Montier LLC, which interestingly enough has also gone through extension, and is also a partner with Warren Sanders. So this is just not a family-owned business that has 1 track in the area. They have multiple interests in this area. And if they are interested in developing, they have one on the table already, on the tabletop mountain behind it. And they should develop it if there's a need. And they should go back to the table and get the right environmental impacts based on the cumulative effects of not only what is being built on the tabletop, but the 6 additional tracks around it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other rebuttal comments wishing to be provided at this time? All right, seeing no additional speakers, we will close the rebuttal for those in opposition, and I will close the public hearing and return it to commissioners for comment and action. Commissioners? Commissioner Wade.
Quick question, and this is directed towards council. Was when
Staff?
to council?
Oh, council, yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah.
In Mr. Axelson's comments, was he threatening to sue the city?
I don't know that I call it a threat. I think he's using magic words that could be used in a lawsuit, but I don't think he was actually threatening a lawsuit.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'm waiting to call on when okay, Commissioner Coleman.
You know, we've been down this road with these extensions of time. We wrestle with them as a commission. But I think we've learned that the law is pretty solid on this issue, that we typically in the city allow an initial 3-year period and 2 3-year extensions after that. And the state additional time did not obfuscate our agreement to give them 9 years. So in our opinion, and this has been reviewed by this commission and legal counsel and planning staff, that they are entitled to additional time, extensions of time. I think that the math that you use is a little bit misunderstanding of the policy as it applies. And for those that live out in that area, there are 12,000 approved lots in that valley there where you guys are at. And those houses are coming, I mean, most of those maps are already, not the maps, but most of those have already been designated. So those are coming. And whether the developers extend the time out or not is a business decision and not really relevant to the extension of time. So with that, I don't have anything else to say. Thank you.
Commissioner Loomis.
Okay, I'm going to try to tackle this. So I think
She's the eloquent one.
I don't know. Let's see if I can pull this off. I'd like to respectfully address what we're really talking about here. And I've taken notes and I've read all the correspondence, and the common thread between the Cattle King Estates voice is you don't want the traffic, you don't want the noise, you want the natural habitat for the animals to stay the same. But there's a fact here, and there's a truth here, and there's something that must be respected. And Mr. Holmes, you said it. You said there are individual rights. You have rights. But the developer has rights as well. You own a piece of property. You have rights with what you may and may not do with that property. So does the developer. So I don't understand where you're trying to use this forum to change the rights that this man has. It's already been deemed legal what he's doing. It's already been deemed legal by the state of California. It's been deemed legal by our staff. And you're asking us to take away his rights. He has the right now. Has nothing to do with this map. It has to do with his zoning land use rights. He has property that he may, by right, legally put on houses, put in a commercial. He can develop this. And I see this, what's happening right now, is just trying to slow him down and cost him money. And that's not fair. It's just not fair. And I realize you enjoy your lifestyle the way you've had it, but change is coming, as another commissioner said. And I would be happy to make a motion to approve this if there's no other commissioners.
Okay, I believe we have a motion. May we have a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Coleman. Commissioners, please cast your votes.
Motion passes with Commissioner Bowers against and Commissioner Bell and Rudnick absent.
Thank you. We are now moving on to the final public hearing of the evening, item 6B. Thank you for your patience to everyone in the audience. Mr. Coyle, if you would provide us your staff report on item 6B.
Item 6B is General Plan Amendment Zone Change 19-0035. Again, before I get into the project specifics, subsequent to the September public hearing on this project, we received an email from one of the local citizens who asked 4 questions that had come up in the meeting that he did not feel he had received satisfactory answers to. So question 1 was, why is city planning staff providing a recommendation for the approval of General Plan Amendment Zone Change 19-0035 when city planning staff previously recommended against General Plan Amendment Zone Change 02-0882. And our response to that is, we are not necessarily bound by decisions from the past unless there is a legal precedent for doing so. We don't base our decisions today on a decision that was made 17 years ago. And I personally do not know what the circumstances were surrounding that project the politics of the time, who the players were in the application, staff. So I can't speak to what the intent was back in 2002, but I do know that staff today did a very thorough analysis of the project, and that analysis was presented to the commission in our staff report.
Can I clarify one thing just for the audience?
Yes.
Can you also confirm that zone change was not on the parcel that we're looking at tonight, right? It was across the street. It was a different parcel, right?
That is correct.
Okay, I just think that's important to.
Question 2, regarding commercial development policies 21 and 24, and this is a reference to policies that are contained within the Bakersfield General Plan. What has changed between 2002 and 2019? Policy 21 states, encourage a separation of at least 1/2 mile between new commercial designations. And I would say that the policy is more of a recommendation than a requirement. And 2, the word is encourage. So again, staff didn't necessarily feel that there was a requirement that you have at least 1/2 mile between new commercial designations. And policy 24 says, encourage the clustering of commercial development in compact areas rather than extended along streets and highways. And staff feels that we have respected that policy as well. Question 3, if General Plan Amendment Zone Change 19-0035 is approved, is the City of Bakersfield and its taxpayers being exposed to the possibility of lawsuits because of the inconsistent application of the general plan policies and stated principles related to GPA Zone Change 02-0882 and 19-0035. Our response to that was, staff is confident that it is following the law in the processing of this map. Just like in other applications that have come before this commission this evening, staff stands by the fact that we are in compliance with the law. And the final question was, why has city staff stated in their staff report that there isn't commercial designated property within 1/2 mile when that is clearly not true? The staff report will be revised for the record, and that is in the staff report before the Planning Commission this evening. I think the calculation was that the project is within 3/10 of a mile of other commercial, but the report has been changed to reflect that fact. So moving on to tonight's project, Porter and Associates, Inc., on behalf of Cindy Henson, is requesting General Plan Amendment Zone Change 19-0035. The project is located on 10.7 acres on the northeast corner of the Hosking Avenue and Weibel Road intersection. The applicant's reason for the request is to develop 73,196 total square feet of neighborhood commercial, including a 5,500 square foot gas station, 5 one-story buildings for retail shops, a 5,850 square foot restaurant, and a 2,500 square foot fast food pad. Per Bakersfield Municipal Code 17.22.040, any restaurants or eating places that would serve alcohol, provide entertainment, or require a drive-through would be required to obtain a conditional use permit for that activity from the city. The general plan amendment request would change the land use designation from low-medium density residential to general commercial on 10.7 acres. The zone change request would change the zoning district from residential suburban and one-family dwelling to neighborhood commercial on 10.7 acres. The city received numerous comment letters and emails prior to and after posting the agenda for this Planning Commission meeting that are either included as part of your staff report or have been presented on the dais for the comments that came in after the agenda was posted. Staff concludes that the project is consistent with surrounding development because the project is neighborhood commercial and it's surrounded by neighborhoods. Staff concluded the project is consistent with the general plan because it allows for a variety of commercial uses in the city and neighborhood commercial adjacent to residential areas. It's located on a site greater than 5 acres. It encourages the clustering of commercial at an intersection, and it develops an infill site. Staff has concluded that this project is consistent with the zoning ordinance because at the time of development, the project will be required to comply with the ordinance and city development standards. Staff continues to recommend adopting the mitigated negative declaration and 2, approving the general plan amendment and zone change. This concludes my reading of the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Coyle. The public hearing on this item is now open. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the project? If so, please come to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
Hello, my name is Fred Porter with Porter & Associates Engineering, representing our applicant, the Hensons and the Arredondos. So we've done a little homework since we were here last. You'll notice that the notch is no longer part of what we were calling the notch, is no longer not a part of the project. It's now incorporated into the overall area. So the current property owners has signed the application and included the property into our application. So that we feel that made a pretty good stride towards making this more of a continuous project and something that would be a lot more palatable. We are an arterial intersection here with Hosking and Weibel. We've got 6-lane arterial roads on both those sides. It's a signalized intersection. It's got crosswalks, pedestrian push buttons, pedestrian safety features, lighting so that traffic can see people crossing the road. We have a conceptual layout that we prepared with the project, and we have right turn lanes off of a right turn lane off of Hosking and right turn lanes off of Weibel Road, giving multiple access points at the corner to provide circulation through the project. There's multiple new ordinances in place that the city's been passing recently regarding commercial developments that require 8-foot wide sidewalks that meander in front of commercial properties, just provide enhanced landscape features, and the developers are, the owners of the property are all about that. They want to provide a good project. They want to provide something that's nice and safe for families to utilize the sidewalks in front of it. They want to provide something that's going to look good with the landscape features. As I've stated previously, there's wall requirements and landscape buffers between commercial and residential properties, and so they're fully prepared to provide those standard features and enhance them if necessary. Let me see here. And one of the things at the last hearing was talking about implementing a PCD overlay as well, and we're in favor of that to make sure that if a project is approved here, that it'll be something that is good for the community and that works well with the surrounding neighborhoods. As a planning director, Mr. Coyle said, we're proposing a neighborhood commercial site here. It's intended to serve the neighborhoods. It's intended to have conveniences and retail establishments, services that are desirable by the community, and where they can walk to it. They can have short drives to it. They're not driving 2 miles to a regional center. I brought some, well, I had some maps on a flash drive, but I didn't realize they had to be reviewed prior to the hearing, so I had some colored drawings to show. But if you zoom out on the zoning map that's up there, obviously there's a lot of commercial up along Panama. There's commercial to the east, the Bass Pro Shop, stuff on the other side of 99 that's supposed to be happening at some point. But as you go west on Hosking, there's nothing over there. And there's certainly no neighborhood commercial. We've got C2 catty corner to our property, and but there's not C1 around here. There's not the neighborhood commercial centers that we need to serve the people in the community. You know, there are multiple ordinances in place, dark skies, and I understand there's either been new ordinance or coming ordinances that talk about cohesive developments where we don't end up with hodgepodge looking commercial strips, where we can have ledge stone features. We have nice trash enclosures that have like a pergola over them. We want to keep those areas covered up so that they're not accessible to vagrants to dig through them and cause problems. We contacted the Bakersfield Police Department and briefly discussed security measures with them. They're working on an email back to us to provide some just general concept ideas of what we can do to make a development that is not going to be as accessible to homeless. We're talking about private security. The developers don't want to have a rundown facility here. They want to have a nice development that they're proud of. They have family members that live in the area. They've used to live in the area. And so they want this to be a good thing for the community. Oh, they also said they wouldn't want to have 24-hour stores. They understand the concerns with having 24-hour stores, so they don't want that. Keeping lighting as appropriate to keep areas lit so that we don't have homeless encampments, but lit in a way where they're not shining into other people's yards. They've talked about potentially wanting, ice cream shops, small retail stuff that the neighborhood can use. They want it to be walkable. They want, the local traffic, not the big, crazy traffic. And as far as there were some additional comments from Mr. Nip with the Sierra Club about electrical vehicle charging stations. And solar for the project, and he sent a letter in regarding that. I don't know if it was today, but it was recently. And the owners they think it's a great idea. They're on board for the electrical vehicle charging stations. Solar for the facility, I think it makes sense. They think it makes sense, so they're not opposed to those, recommendations there. I think someone pointed out earlier, the California Green Code does already require that you provide stalls for that and provide infrastructure for that. And you can put it in at a later date. So that's available. So we think this is the highest and best use for this property. It's really not configured very well to support a single family home configuration. It's an odd shape, and through no fault of the owners of the property, they're not the ones that came up with this configuration. It's probably been like this for a very long time, and they just want to get a project here that will be good for the community. I think that's all I've got. I think there's some other members that want to speak in favor as well.
Thank you. Are there any additional audience members wishing to speak in favor? Please identify yourself and proceed.
My name is Riley Ken, and I'm just a resident. I live in the Stone Creek development, which is about another 1.5 miles southwest of the corner that we're talking about. I just mainly wanted to talk about, because it seems like all you guys get are neighbors that are against stuff coming in here. I've been living there for a little while. I've been a resident of Bakersfield my whole life, and this corner is like perfect for what we're talking about. So it's, for me, it's beneficial. I live right up Hosking. I can come down Hosking, pick up a coffee before I hop on the freeway, go to work. It's got access, looks like you can have access either from Hosking or from Weibel. So it, to me, it looks like it's gonna benefit that whole corner. Right now, it just sits there like a dust storm. So it's just kind of in a place where I don't see how you can even put residential property on there, as he said. So it's just, to me, it seems like this is what needs to go there. As far as homeless, and that you get that everywhere in Bakersfield. In California alone, it's kind of out of hand. But to me, listening to what I've heard, what I've been informed on, is that the developer's going to take care of this. They're going to take care of whatever problems that comes with. They're ready to do the things that, as us residents in the neighborhood, want done. So also, for me, I've lived in a couple other neighborhoods. I grew up in, they call Laurel Glen, which is kind of by Hagen Oaks. And back in the day, when I was going to high school, there was a big deal on whether they should put it in the marketplace, and the shell with the country like right around the corner. And they tried to hold this project up over and over and over again, and now look at it. Everybody in that community uses that whole area. Everybody goes in there for getting their hair cut, going to Applebee's, whatever's there. I feel like this is going to bring our community together. We have a real diverse neighborhood. There's everybody there. And for me, I enjoy it. I enjoy that we're a community right there with everybody. I just think something like this is going to bring another opportunity. Instead of social media or something else that I'm on trying to communicate with my neighbors, I'm right there meeting them face to face at the coffee shop, picking up a coffee before we go to work. It's just another place for us to have a networking situation where it's not straight up how everybody's doing it on the phone. So to me, it just seems like something that needs to be there. And just coming from a resident on a positive side, and not such, seems like everybody coming up here is just negative, 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 talking about that somehow this isn't going to help us out. I just think it's ridiculous. But to me, I think, and coming from a lot of other people in the community that don't want to get up and be involved, this is good for us. It's not something that we're trying to oppose. So thank you.
Thank you. Please identify yourself and proceed.
Manuel Garcia. I've been resident of that community for well over 10 years. I've been knowing the Hensons for that long as well. Mike, he's my neighbor. 4 years ago, my son was applying for jobs when out of high school, and everybody was denying him because work experience. Talked to Mike about it. Week and a half later, 2 weeks later, he called my son up. Hey, we got work for you. Just come on over. That'll work out for your applications. Currently, my daughter, she has to drive 6 miles, roughly. She's 16, go work. I mean, this would be a good chance for the local kids, you know, straight out of high school, get work experience for their applications. you know. I mean, I think that's good investment for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers in the audience in favor of the project? All right, seeing no additional speakers in favor, I will now open the dais for those in opposition.
Try to navigate the use of this. My name's David Polinsky.
Thank you.
My wife Gloria and I also live in the Stone Creek neighborhood. Actually, we live what we call Stone Creek South. We're about a block away from the proposed project, and we're opposed to this particular project. I'm also vice president and treasurer of the Weibel Road Action Group, a community-based organization. And I'm speaking on behalf of over 400 residents throughout our community that are also opposed to this particular request. One of our primary concerns of this project is that it'll be increasing the amount of commercial development in our community. There's already more than enough commercially designated property, and in our opinion, the project is also inconsistent with the general plan. Before proceeding, I'd like to address a couple other issues, one in the staff report. In the staff report, there's a mistake in there where it states that the land is currently vacant, but that's not the case. I'm not sure how well, it's not going to come across. This is the property here, and it's hard to tell, but there's actually 4 homes located in this drawing here. There's probably literally where those green dots are, those are the 4 homes. And and again, these are 4 homes that are on 6 different parcels that are being, I guess, combined. You got multiple property owners. It seems really complicated to me. But the property at 7726 Weibel Road has 2 houses. Has an assessed value of $146,000 and change. 7908 Weibel Road has 1 house and is assessed value of $135,000. That was the Notch property, the Leone family that joined in with the other owners. And then 3112 Hosking Road has 1 house, and the assessed value of that property is a little over $283,000. So clearly, this land isn't vacant. There's 4 homes, and there's people, as far as I can tell, we can tell, that are living on those properties. As I understand the general plan, it's a series of goals, policies, implementation measures that forms a blueprint for guiding development of the city. In essence, it's a key tool that influences the quality of life, and we've heard lots of discussions tonight. I've learned more about this stuff than I ever really cared to. Interesting, and some very cool ideas that I've heard expressed today. But in there, the general plan talks about, promoting the formation of several large, concentrated, mixed-use centers. The plan attempts to consolidate smaller neighborhoods serving commercial development by prescribing minimum distances between commercial parcels and by discouraging strip commercial development. Further down on that same page says strip commercial development or strip commercial and sprawling residential land use patterns which lack consolidation or focus are inconsistent with the principles defined in the plan. Although Freddie's sharing the design things with us this evening, we believe that their intent is strip mall development. Even on their Facebook group highlighted up, they say they're adding a strip mall, which is clearly not consistent with the spirit and principle and philosophies of the general plan. Mr. Coyle earlier brought up policies 21 and 24, and I have a different view of those policies and how they relate to the zoning change 0882 back in 2003, 2004. This planning commission back in 2003, December 18, 2003, denied the request for that particular zoning change. And that property was situated literally east of this proposed project. So the highlighted yellow is the zoning change before you today, and across the street was the zoning change 020882. The city staff back then recommended to deny that zoning change request. And when it was before the commission, this planning commission, the commissioners asked several questions. I highlighted some of their comments. That's not going to come out very well. Maybe I can just read these. Commissioner Tragish, if I'm saying that correctly, further inquired if staff would reiterate why staff believes this particular project for C2 would be inappropriate for this area, to which staff responded that the policy in the general plan discourages the location of commercial within a half-mile of one another, there being across the street. Staff stated they have consistently recommended denial on proposals that want to locate commercial across from existing vacant commercial. So when I posed the question to Mr. Coyle, asking why city staff recommended against back in 2002, 2003, and they today were not recommending against, I was looking for specifically, city staff called out specific reasons for property located really 50 feet east of where this property was. Commissioner Ellison commented that he likes the office commercial aspect, stated he does not like commercial zoning, the commercial zoning, and finds this location is not amenable to commercial. He further stated that there is a lot of commercial land designated in this area. Commissioner Blockley commented that he is inclined at this point to support staff's recommendation because of the policy's inconsistency. Policy 21 with half-mile separation and policy 24, the clustering of commercial development. He stated that the substantial opposition to the proposed planned amendment and zone change weighs in on this decision. And finally, Commissioner Lomas was back here in 2003, stated currently she does not see a need for this proposed commercial zoning change, but in the future, if there does present a need, probably closer to 99 would be a better site. Fast forward to today, and city planning staff are recommending approval and stating completely opposite opinions with regards to policy 21 and 24 for properly located nearby. I did ask Mr. Coyle the question in my email, what changed between 2002 and 2009? His actual response to that question was, and I quote, "The policies are dated 2002 and they are recommendations, not requirements, use of the word encourage," end quote. We didn't believe then that that answered our question. The current general plan is what has been approved by the City Council and states that it was updated in 2016. The fact is that with regards to policies 21 and 24, nothing has changed, and therefore we believe that the consistent application of the plan's policies, goals, spirit, and intent is necessary to preserve the community's trust in the integrity of the general plan. But there has something has changed though. The Hosky 99 interchange was completed and more commercial development in the area has been occurring since then. In fact, this Commission on August 15th approved, and I may not have this right, I think it's a plan development review for a piece of property that is only a quarter mile away up here at the intersection of Hosking and Hughes Lane. The plan development, I doubt you'll be able to see this, but I'll try, is this project here. It's in multiple phases, 3 phases. Phase 1 includes a gas station, 2 fast food restaurants, a convenience store, and I believe there's what they call a multi-tenant building. I don't know what that means. That means shops. I suspect it does. So a quarter-mile away, this commission's already approved, staff has recommended a nearly similar development in many aspects for the same services that they're talking about bringing into our community. And we think that's, again, it's too much commercial development. It's something that our community, many members of our community don't support. And in summary, based on the foregoing information, we respectfully disagree with the staff's conclusion that the project is consistent with the general plan. Furthermore, there is more than enough commercial designated property, and we ask you to vote to deny this zone change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, try to get this right here. Good evening. My name is Dave Morrison, and I'm one of the founding members of Wyber Road Action Group back in '04, and I'm the immediate past president, and I'll refer to the group as RAG from now on. But it started for one important reason, the continuation of a peaceful, quiet, family residential neighborhood. The most important task for RAG is a continuation of its original plan, taking actions when something is proposed that will interrupt our quiet neighborhood. When a request to change a residential zoned area to commercial for the development of a strip mall, we must step up and do our job as to involve the local residents, inform them what the proposal is, and get their input, and the most effective way to do this is face-to-face. What you see on a projector in those streets that are out highlighted in pink is just a partial area that the RAG volunteers have covered door to door on foot, talking to the residents about this project. We would introduce ourselves, explain the reason why we were there, and hand them a flyer that gave more detail about the project and why we are against it. We've had residents look at the flyer, thank us for coming by, and said, well, we'll let you know, and you go back in their house. And as we go down their street to get more information for other residents, these people would come back out of their house, chase us down to sign the petition against the project once they had a chance to read the flyer and see what was actually going in there. This activity has resulted, as David said, over 325 signatures and over 167 postcards returned opposing this project. That's over 450 local families, not just individuals, but families that are against this zoning change and strip mall. And then we all have the same problem that has been brought up already a couple times tonight, this homeless. Both the county supervisors and the city council have addressed this major problem with little success. The common knowledge that commercial establishments attract the homeless, drug addicted, and mentally challenged population. On November 13th of this year, 2019, KBA TV published a report entitled No Proof, No Consequences. To summarize that report, the Bakersfield Police Department in the last 2 years made 5,448 arrests for trespassing, drunken disorderly, drug possession, and second-degree burglary. According to research, more than 3,000 of those crimes were committed by homeless people. Because of various factors, these arrests resulted in little or no jail time. Homeless people accounted for 43% of all drunk and disorderly arrests, 43% of all burglary arrests, and 75% of all trespassing arrests. A response to the polling of the Kern County Sheriff's deputies was they were frustrated, angry, betrayed, confused, and slapped in the face just because another way of Sacramento's decriminalization in the hands of those enforcing the law. They can't do anything about it. It's common knowledge that the homeless cause trash buildup, urinate and defecate outside on commercial property, stand on traffic islands, panhandling, and sleep outdoors on commercial property. We have dozens of school-aged children passing this piece of property all week long. There is a school bus stop just south of the property. And our question is, do we want our children exposed to this type of environment on a daily basis? In addition to this, the people who have invested in living in this and adjoining neighborhood will be exposed to noise, litter, delivery trucks going in and out, gasoline and tank trucks delivering fuel throughout the day, and sleep-disturbing overhead lights at night. On November 6th, we had a meeting with Ms. Hansen and Fred Porter in Mr. Porter's office. My first question to Ms. Hansen was she aware of RAG? And she was not. Our second question was she aware of the reason for RAG? And she was not. So we explained what we do and how we represent the people who live in this area, and that we're against commercial development on this property, and that we work for the residents here and nobody else. After some discussion, it appeared to Mr. Porter, since the people of RAG were against any commercial development, and he came up with a very good, we think, and refreshing idea. Excuse me. What he suggested, if a residential development was developed on that piece of property, possibly you could come through the cul-de-sac on Balanced Rock, get an entrance through Balanced Rock, and additional entrance off Weibel Road to get a good flow of traffic for the homeowners in that area. And we thought that was quite forward thinking, to tell you the truth. In response to this, we talked to a Mr. Sam Jones, who lives in the cul-de-sac on Balanced Rock, and he talked to his neighbors. And one thing was verified, as we discovered before, that people were not aware what was proposed for this piece of property. As it was explained to them, then they understood better. The question was, would you rather have a commercial strip mall on the other side of your back fence, or a residential neighborhood built and more traffic coming down your street? And even though this was not an easy decision to make, they would prefer a residential neighborhood. So it's evident that the homes in close proximity to a commercial development do see a negative impact on their property value. And home ownership is one of the most important, if not the most important means available for a family to accumulate wealth. Homeowners seek to protect their investments and their quality of life, and is directly related to their home. Decisions that positively or negatively affect residential value should be taken seriously, and we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Please identify yourself and proceed.
Good evening. My name is Joe Jimenez. I'm president of the Weibel Road Action Group. Thank you for your time, 826. And I've lived in Bakersfield now 16 years. I came from Los Angeles. When we first moved here, it was beautiful. Clean streets, beautiful homes, it was quiet, and we knew that eventually, as time goes by, there was going to be development. We understand that. And RAG, we're not against development at all. But Mr. Porter paints a pretty picture, doesn't he? Where it's going to be to serve our community, a gas station, a couple restaurants, fast food. You know, that all makes sense, but not at this location. Especially now hearing about that approved development over there on Hosking, Hughes Lane, a quarter of a mile away. As a retired LAPD officer, 20 years on the job, I have experience with strip malls and the problems that come with it. This is not a good project at this location. Believe me, it's not. We have worked so hard. As my colleague Dave showed you the map, we've covered basically 2 to 3 square miles, knocking on people's doors, asking them, do you understand what's going on in this community? And a lot of them, they had no idea. So we explained to them. 98% of the people oppose this project for various reasons. Let's not even get into the homeless right now. Let's talk about what it's going to bring to our community, the noise, the traffic, the light, cars rolling down Hosking with their music up loud, the lighting around there. This community will never be the same if you decide to change the zoning. So we like the way the zoning is right now. Keep it that way. We'd appreciate that. Or you can build homes on that location. You know that you can. So we put a lot of work into this. We really appreciate your time, and we thank you. And hey, we just we pray that you make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers wishing to speak in opposition to the project? Okay. Seeing no additional speakers in opposition, I will now move to a time for commissioners to ask questions of both the public and city staff. I think Commissioner Lomas would like to speak based on your hand gestures. Yeah.
And I can't find my button, so my question to staff is, in looking at the map, I was actually going to go jump up and look over there, but in looking at the map, it's showing the zoning map that corner is R3.
I believe it's RS. I thought that same thing. It's kind of like a weird, yeah.
It's RS, but it's the same color as R3. It has a dash. Can we get a certainty?
Well, because you can see RS below.
It looks like it there. Does that say RS? Because it looks like R3.
I know, I thought the same thing, but
They're all RS.
It's an S?
Yes.
Thank you, that's my question.
we're all going to have a commissioner group outing to the optometrist. So I had the same issue. I thought it was R3.
We won't even, yeah, thank you. We need better maps.
Is there any other questions? Okay. Any other commissioners have questions for staff or the public? I have one question. Is a member of staff here that does kind of single-family subdivision division or street layouts? Okay, thanks. Because the site, independent of kind of adjoining the adjacent neighborhood, which there's complications involved in that, the viability of this site as an R1 zone, can you discuss? Because a lot of the current houses that are there are backing into arterials, which is not allowed by city standards. So is this site developable as an R1 zone? I mean, that's a very open question.
I don't have any, I have not even thought about that at all.
No, I appreciate the honesty. Yep.
So
Okay.
I have no input.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. It's kind of there's going to be opinions coming out, so I'll wait till the hearing is closed. No other questions? We will open up a period of rebuttal. First, those in favor of the project will have 5 minutes to speak. Please remember this is a 5-minute total time, so be respectful of all people wishing to speak by being succinct and not repeating previous speakers' sentiments. With that, Madam Clerk, if you would start, or not start the clock yet, but get the clock ready. Mr. Porter, are you, okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Please begin the clock, and Mr. Porter, please state your name and proceed.
All right, Freddie Porter. The strip mall comments. This isn't a strip mall site. This is a 10-acre site. It's 200 feet deep at the north end. It's kind of a triangular shape, 660 feet along Hosking and 1,000 feet along Weibel Road. So it's not. It doesn't meet your strip. It's greater than 5 acres. It's not a little skinny strip that's got one building. This has multiple satellite pads, including drive-throughs, gas stations, restaurants, and along with retail pads. So it was very unfortunate that they put the thing on Facebook about it being a strip mall. It is not a strip mall. It doesn't meet the definition of it. So I wanted to clear that up. The question about whether it's conducive to a residential layout. It really isn't. You can't front on arterials, so it would have to have local streets come in, and you're going to need access. You're probably going to be allowed one access point for a local road there. It's if you look at the adjacent subdivision that they brought up, the previous zone change on the other side of the street, that was probably about a 20-acre parcel. It was much larger than 10. It was probably close to double the size of the parcel we've got, and it was a nice rectangular configuration. It was conducive to street layouts. They had local streets there. They had cul-de-sacs. They had knuckles. They had all those things that you need the area to make a subdivision layout. We don't have that. We have a unique situation here, and I can't speak to what was done 20 years ago. That was a C2 request, as I think one of the Daves read out earlier from the RAG group. Our request for a C1, we're looking for a neighborhood commercial use. We're not asking for a C2. It's just, we don't think a C2 is a good fit either. We think a C1's a great fit. It's just a neighborhood commercial use and surrounded by neighborhoods. So it makes sense. Let's see here. The homeless, you know, we could talk about homeless all day long. I did sit through the homeless presentation on what was going to go on with the city from the city manager's office. City's proposed measures to address that. The app is great for cleaning up. That's good. I'm confident they're going to come up with the ultimate solution that'll help with the homeless situation throughout the city. And they've done a lot of hard work to do that. And we're all about providing measures that are going to help deter the homeless from hanging out there. So the owners are on board to do that and make this a nice community development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Riley Cannon again. Just briefly, real quick, as far as, it just seems like I never had anybody walk up to my door. I live right in that area. I never had anybody talk to me about this side, but it seems like this is the only side that was expressed. So I'm trying to just speak up from the people that I do know that feel the same way I do, that we would like to have this project, and if that is passed, then I think the majority of the area would be accommodating to this. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers in favor of the project? So we have a minute and 15 seconds remaining. Please state your name and proceed.
Good evening. I'm Mike Henson. Once again, born and raised here in Bakersfield. We've had that property for over 20 years, so we've been through the times with it. Everything's changed. At the last meeting, we took what you said, the advice, made those changes. I've done everything toe-to-toe that the city wants, did the testing. I appreciate all the hard work you gentlemen have put in for this as well, really. I live there too, and I never got a flyer at my door as well, you know. And that's fine. I'm more about how it was, and I thought these are my neighbors that I live by and trying to make things better for them. I'm not trying to put a strip mall in there, you know, and to bring we got that notch house out of there, and to bring that letter from a person who didn't live there and say that was signed was not cool to do to us and these folks here. You guys should know better than how you did that. Anyways, that's all I want to say. So.
Thank you. With that, I think we only have 7 seconds, so we will call the rebuttal period for those in favor and open up the dais for those in opposition. If someone would like to come to the microphone to start us off, we will start the clock. Madam Clerk.
I guess first, I don't understand what you're talking about, a letter or anything like that. None of us sent, I have no idea. David and Joe has no idea. So you have better reference, we'd like to know about that. The number one thing in the whole state, actually the state of California and the city of Bakersfield, is housing. We desperately need housing. And this is why we think that this land, it could be developed, and like with Mr. Porter's idea of the pass-through into single-family dwellings. And that would serve a much better purpose for our population here in Bakersfield. It would treat the neighbors that live there much better. And before when this whole thing came up, there's several different owners on this piece of property, and we always have this thing in the back of the line, why are they really wanting this zoning change? Is it to really to build a strip mall there? It was in their document too, by the way. Or is it maybe to get a zoning change and make it a little more valuable to change and rotate this property to another builder? So we don't know. It's just something we have to surmise. But anyhow, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Joe Jimenez. Okay, we started this organization back in 2004. We're caretakers of our community. We want to make sure that there's responsible, good planning for our communities. And we're nice people. We're not to bully anybody or, you know, we're just here because we're concerned about what's going to go in that area. Now, there's already a project proposed on Haas King and Hughes Lane already. You're going to put a gas station there, a 3-story motel, and some fast food restaurants in there. A quarter of a mile is what we're talking about on Haas King Weibel. Now, why would you want to put another gas station in there and another fast food? This is a residential area, ladies and gentlemen. This is already an established, good community. You're going to flip it, and there's going to be negative stuff coming in. So that's all I have to say. I appreciate your attention and your help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Wanda Brown, and I am a homeowner. My backyard backs up to Weibel, where this is going. And since I've been in my home, there's been several accidents at that intersection. There's been a couple of cars that have plowed into our back walls. So by putting this strip mall or whatever they want to put their gas station, is only going to open it up to more noise, accidents, things like that. I can sit in my home and I can literally hear cars coming down the street, bumping their music, and screeching down the street all hours of the night. So being a homeowner, that's not what I signed up for. So I don't want anything else to come to make it even worse for me, being that I'm a single female owning a home. I don't want anything else to make me more nervous in my own home. That's my investment. So thank you.
Thank you. We have a minute remaining if there are any additional speakers in opposition to the project. Seeing no additional speakers, we will call the time. And I will close the public hearing and move to commission for comment and action. Are there any commissioners that would like to start us out? Yes. You can go first if you like. Yeah, Commissioner Lomas.
Hi, I'm conflicted on this one, so I'm just going to share my thoughts, and I really do want to hear from the other commissioners, because I am very conflicted on this one. One thing I want to address, though, is policies, because that's been spoken about quite a bit. And I like the way our policies are written, and here's why. There's room. They write it, and I know you took exception to it's encouraging and those types of words, but those words are very important to make it work for today, because policies can't keep getting written over and over and over again as our world changes. So what those policies do, it allows room for us to take other factors into consideration, especially something like need. Okay, and here's where so in saying that, here's where I'm struggling. Do I think we as Bakersfield need any more commercial given what retail is doing? And I'm shopping on Amazon. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not even buying shampoo. I don't want to go to the store. I'm ordering it in my house. So I question and struggle commercial in itself. Why are we doing so much commercial, and in 5 years, 10 years, what's it all going to look like if those storefronts are empty? So I have a real struggle with that, but I also know I don't really want to cook, so, you know, if they're all going to be restaurants, really good restaurants, then that'd probably be more convincing to me. But in the meantime, we don't know what it's going to be, and we cannot tell them what it's going to be. We don't have that authority. So I struggle with commercial and retail. Here's this one, okay? I don't know who did this, but this is not good planning. We've got a bunch of cul-de-sacs that end into a triangular piece of property. And I agree, it would have been nice if it was all residential, but it's not. And so now what do we do with it? You can't leave it empty forever and expect the owner to just say, okay, I'll just leave it empty forever. Well, you guys don't want that either, because I'm sure it's dirty and dusty and trash and whatever else is there. So, all right, now what do we do? And that's what we're here for. We're supposed to be all smart, and we're supposed to say the highest and best use for that is. Well, here's my struggle. I'm looking at it today, and I get a kick. Oh, by the way, I met with these guys, the Weibel Road Action Group, and I couldn't say anything. And for you guys, anybody that knows me, for me not to say anything, it was really hard. I just sat there and I go, you know, I can't say anything. So here, I'm saying it now. So we've got this triangular piece of property, badly planned. What do we do with it? The odds of success in punching through those cul-de-sacs, that's going to be, you got to get a whole bunch of people to agree. Well, I don't know anybody can agree on anything. So is that probably going to happen? I doubt it. So then they're going to have to figure out, all right, how do we fit a bunch of houses in there? I don't see how you can. I've been doing this for a while. I mean, I'm no genius, but that's hard. So then what are we left with? What do you do with it? If it's not commercial, you know what it is? It's apartments. So I'm struggling. If this was brought through as an apartment complex, there aren't any in this neighborhood. So when you're talking about what's needed, so what's highest and best use, to me today, it's apartments. Because there we go, talk about the homeless. We got to put them somewhere. We got to build housing. I know I'm not saying put homeless in your neighborhood, really. But what I'm saying is we do have a true need for housing for everybody. Everybody needs a place to live. And I don't know what our housing market is in apartments, but I think we need them because rents keep going up and up and up and up. So that's telling me we probably have a shortage. So I've rambled on long enough. I am conflicted at this point. I'd love to hear from other commissioners.
Well, seeing no other commissioners wishing to speak, I would just think, echoing off of your sentiments, to me this is a parcel that, agree, they built a residential neighborhood to make it a very inconvenient piece of site property, that all of those existing homes are not in compliance with current code. So we are basically saying this is what's here, or nothing, you know, or like you said, an existing neighborhood agrees to give up their cul-de-sac and allow people to, which is the whole nother effort and not something that we're considering. And I do think looking up Weibel, it's interesting that there are a lot of these R1 parcels that just kind of dot Weibel, and so I think it's, again, not a good planning exercise in what actually was built. So I do think, for me, seeing this site as a single user, and that my question about the subdivisions is, based on my limited knowledge of required offsets from major intersections, the ingress and egress of this site and providing two exits and entrances as itself seems very likely infeasible. Again, I didn't study it. I haven't laid out the areas, but it's to get, I think Mr. Porter commented that the other parcel that was consideration for a zone change is quite a bit larger in that it allows those distances to comply. And again, I didn't study exhaustively. I didn't measure it out. That's just kind of looking at the plan. I also think a big thing that changed from 2002 is the Hosking interchange. I think looking at our city and looking at land uses off of arterials that directly feed to 99, I think there is a noted shift in land use towards commercial, as it is a much higher volume of traffic than if it was like a Harris Road or a road that did not have connection to 99 and therefore kind of a regional and statewide transit system. So I think that, I mean, to me, this is a site that's an example of the imperfectness of transferring what was kind of suburban land into, or what was once kind of rural land into more suburban land when it's not pieced and parceled, because the tracks go in first, there's these little remainder parcels, and I think I would just say that I should also acknowledge I met with the Weibel Road Action Group as well, and I do want to applaud them for their investment in their neighborhood, their active participation. My favorite thing about this commission is the opportunity for the public to come and dialogue, and so I think it is also a tough one, because I agree we live in a landscape where retail is in very short demand. I mean, fast casual and restaurants are pretty in demand. We have parcels that are not realized yet in the adjacency, so that is, I share that struggle with Commissioner Lomas. I would say, just in wanting to hear other commissioners' thoughts, I definitely think that if this proceeds tonight, applying a PCD overlay so that there is a continued investment in a public participation for those audience members, a PCD overlay would require a site plan of what the developer intends to do to come before this commission and provides public participation in reviewing that. As we mentioned tonight, the large-scale retail developments and kind of enhanced architectural requirements would be a part of that, I am assuming. And so, but yeah, I agree with Commissioner Lomas in that there's a lot to consider. All right, any other commissioner? Commissioner Wade.
That's why I wanted to hear you guys first. That's a great analysis. To the residents, I think it may be true that the highest and best purpose of this is not residential for all the reasons that you just heard. Those are wise comments. I'm king property rights. I'm all about the individual being able to do what they want with their land. However, and to develop their land that they own. However, this isn't commercial by right. It's zoned a different way. And I think what I'm struggling with is some consideration has to be given to a unified, seemingly unified neighborhood, asking about their impression of their neighborhood when they bought their home. So I see that as being true, as well as the strong arguments that you both just made.
Commissioner Coman, was that a request? Oh, there it goes. There's a delay.
Thank you. Well, I guess we're in agreement that we're all a little bit conflicted. I want to say that I don't feel that we're bound by a decision on another parcel that was made 16 years ago. So I don't think that's a real good argument about, I mean, 20 years ago there weren't any houses out there. So, things grow and things progress. I also get really bugged by this comment every time somebody doesn't want a commercial project in their neighborhood. They talk about the homeless thing. The homeless issue is being addressed by the city and the county and the state, for that matter. And to say that the commercial is they're going to draw homeless, that just bothers me a little bit. Those homeless people are already there, and you just don't see them. and they're walking around your neighborhoods at night when you're not awake. And so I just don't like that argument. But I will say this parcel of land doesn't really lend itself well to any residential development either. I just don't see how you get it in there. I guess I always, from the very first time I saw this, I was struggling on how that ever came to be. I do, however, applaud the residents that they have done a thorough job of communicating with the neighbors. And Mr. Wade put it, I think, hit the nail on the head to say that this is not an entitled property. You know, there's no entitlement to change the zoning. I just also want to comment about this half-mile thing. I think that half-mile thing, I don't know where it ever came from. We have that everywhere in Bakersfield where you have commercial property, catty corner across the street from other commercial property. So I'm not exactly sure how that's really applied. And I was given the same answer, that it's just a recommendation. So I joined the rest of the commissioners that are confused, or not confused, conflicted. And so I would like to hear a motion from somebody. So.
Commissioner Bowers? Yes. All right, Commissioner Bowers.
Well, what a night. This has been absolutely arduous to navigate through. But when we talk about homelessness in the community, and we haven't seen it so pronounced, and I haven't met with anyone, but we see how pronounced homelessness is in the community, and every community says we've got to do something about it, but essentially when it's their turn to step up and kind of essentially address this issue, everyone goes, well, not me. And I saw some of the faces when my colleague mentioned apartments, and I think I saw a big gasp there. And I think that given the decision between commercial or apartments, I think that the pendulum swings. And so I appreciate your passion and your concern on both sides. And this is what democracy looks like. And we have a fun decision to make, but I'm willing to make that decision. And I'd like to make a motion to approve a general plan amendment, zone change 190035 with the PCD overlay.
I'll go ahead and second that motion.
Is it working, or should we just do a roll call vote?
It's working. Yeah.
It's working. I think some of the commissioners aren't. Maybe.
Motion
The
passed.
motion fails.
Oh, motion, yeah. Oh, Coleman voted no. Okay. Motion fails.
Or just fails. We're done?
The motion to
fails.
approve fails.
There's a, yep. Yes.
I would like to talk. Ideally, what I would like, if I could wave a magic wand and say what that parcel should be, I think it should be senior housing. Because there's a lot of old people coming your way, and they need housing.
Okay. It would, but that was not what we're reviewing tonight. Yeah. Okay. Yes, that was the magic wand comment. So may staff note that magic wands are requested of for the upcoming commission meetings, yes. All right, thank you. Thank you to the public. We are now moving on to communications, which I believe, Mr. Coyle, you have a workshop that should be very interesting for all of us. Can we take a bathroom break, 5 minutes? I'm hearing some rumbling. Okay. So we'll reconvene at 9 o'clock. Thank you. But we are very looking forward to it. And then I would also, Mr. Iger requested that we make a motion to deny so that we can process this.
Because the applicant would need something to appeal. He'd appeal the denial from the planning commission.
Yes. So may I have a motion to deny the request of, all right, Commissioner Lomas, may I have a second? Don't look at us. Yeah. Yeah. Like, it's on you three. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I second that.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Wade. Commissioners, please cast your votes. Yeah, and no. A yes means no. And please don't change your vote. It's like 9 o'clock. Yeah. Oh, can we not revote on? All right, let's do roll call for old time's sake. Yeah.
Clear about what we already did.
Yeah. They need something
Need
to
to
appeal, so they'll appeal the denial because it could be clear that it failed, but like I said, we want closure, that we actually have a recommendation to deny and then.
Give the applicant closure, Commissioner Lomas. Come on. A roll call vote, please, Madam Clerk. All right, we start with me. Lomas was a first, Wade was a second, and a yes vote means a denial.
Commissioner Cater,
No.
Commissioner Coman,
Yes.
Commissioner Bell, Commissioner Bowers,
No.
Commissioner Lomas,
Yes. No, wait a minute. Am I doing yes or no? Yes.
It's like a proposition ballot.
Yes.
Commissioner Wade.
Yes.
Can we have it noted, I think 9 o'clock is our cutoff time. Something just happened up here that's not, yeah, something just happened that is, I can't describe. So with that, Mr. Coyle, please provide your staff. What was in that coffee? Yeah. Mr. Coyle? I think that we have the attention span of maybe third graders, so.
The motion to deny was approved, for the
Yes.
record.
All right.
But the vote was.
Communications. Please.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for your patience, which I'm sure is waning at this point. The reason for this workshop is to set up the commission to entertain an ordinance amendment on conditional use permits. See, I thought you would like it if you, but knowing how late it is, I will try to breeze through this presentation, and I would hope we would have a better dialogue when we come back with an actual ordinance for the commission to review. So Dana, thank you. Thank you, Dana. So like all ordinance amendments, this starts out with a referral from a council member, Councilmember Freeman again, at the April 10th, 2019 City Council meeting. And he asked that staff examine ways to improve the conditional use permit process. So we went to the Planning and Development Committee in August, and I believe Commissioners Lomas and Coman were at that meeting. And just, I know you know this already, but as part of my slideshow, just please humor me. We have a zoning ordinance in the city of Bakersfield for two reasons. One is to implement the goals and policies of the general plan, and the other is to promote the health, safety, and welfare of the residents. So, very simple. We have a permissive zoning ordinance, and permissive, that means that we identify uses that are permitted by right in the different zone districts. We also allow for conditional uses in zone districts through a conditional use permit. If a use is not specifically listed, then it's prohibited unless the Planning Commission and the City Council adopt a resolution that says now this use is either permitted by right or we add it to the list of uses that are only permitted through a conditional use permit. The code grants the Board of Zoning Adjustment the authority to issue conditional use permits, and with that power comes the ability to either approve or deny a conditional use permit application. I think part of staff's problem and part of the commission's problem has been with a policy that basically says you can apply for a conditional use permit for any use in any zone. And staff shares the concern with the Planning Commission that that can lead to incompatible land uses, whether you have industrial activities in a commercial area or commercial activities in a residential area. So I think I briefly described how you can get a use added to the list, and that's basically through a referral by a council member who says, go to the Planning Commission, get their buy-in, and then bring us an ordinance to City Council. And typically that's done through the Planning and Development Committee. Most of our land use issues get addressed by Planning and Development Committee, and then they would direct us to draft an ordinance, bring it before you for a public hearing, and then bring it to them for first and second reading. We also have a provision currently in the code that's basically a determination of similar use, where the example here is you've got archery ranges that you can get a conditional use for, and now apparently it's very trendy to go to a bar, drink, and then want to throw axes. And some might say that throwing an axe is very similar to an archery range. You know, you're putting a weapon down range, and but we do have a provision in the code already, and here it is, 17.08.040. Again, as evidenced by a resolution adopted by the Planning Commission and City Council. So in summary, comparable cities, right? Most of the jurisdictions that we researched show that conditional use permits are typically in the wheelhouse of the Planning Commission. But they also have provisions for either the planning director or a Board of Zoning Adjustment to make a decision at sort of a lower level. But most of the jurisdictions use the Planning Commission for conditional use permits. The other thing we found out is someone had asked, oh, well, how many conditional use permits can you have on one site? And I'll bet everybody can come up with an example of that right here in Bakersfield, where we have the infamous Coffee and Stockdale intersection, where we have at least 3 different conditional use permits. So at that August 13th Planning and Development Committee meeting, I believe Commissioner Lomas brought up the issue about public noticing. And so staff was directed to go back and research public noticing and then come back to the Planning and Development Committee with an ordinance that addresses conditional use permits generally and then specifically includes a noticing requirement. Again, we looked at comparable cities and they all require public noticing. So for public noticing, we have 2 different types of sites we're considering. One is if the property is already developed, and then the other is if it's an undeveloped site. So if it's on an undeveloped site, the existing provisions in the municipal code would apply in this case. So you get 1 8-by-4-foot sign, and you place a sign every 300 feet of road frontage, and you post those signs 20 days in advance of the public hearing on that conditional use permit application. On developed sites in a non-residential zone, you would have 1 4-by-4 sign on the road, and you would also have, for example, an 11-by-17 sign in a window or doorway of the facility where the application would take effect. In a residential zone, you just get 1 sign. It's not to exceed a total of 16 square feet or 6 feet in height, and it would also be placed along the road frontage, but not in the public right-of-way. The other thing staff did was to look at conditional use permit applications that we've processed over the last 5 years, just to see if there are particular uses that came up more than once, and we did find several. The ones that we identified were rooming houses, adult daycares, banquet venues, serving alcohol in a movie theater, and truck stops. So we put together a little matrix, which probably doesn't look very good on this screen. Hopefully it looks a little better on your screen. And you can see that we've got the 5 uses across the top and whether they would be permitted or permitted through conditional use permit, and the zoning districts where that would apply. So at our next Planning Commission meeting, we will bring before you an ordinance amendment that addresses conditional use permits and includes the public noticing. And we would then ask you to consider that and make a recommendation, which we can then take to City Council. So that concludes my workshop. Are there any questions?
Commissioner Lomas, you can always say something.
Thank you.
Well, unless it's not the appropriate
I
time.
just really want to thank staff, because this is, as staff knows, it's been very important to me. And the public needs transparency. They need to be able to weigh in if something is going to be happening in their neighborhood. So I really appreciate the staff's good work and their support, and the Planning and Development Committee. There's some really good work coming out of that body. So thank you.
Commissioner Coleman?
On the signage, I remember that discussion at the development committee meeting about this posting of the signs. What do we do currently for residential CUP changes? Is there a sign requirement or not?
Right now, there's not.
Okay, so now we're going to put up a 4x4 sign, basically.
Yeah.
And this would address people wanting to make group homes and that kind of thing, and make that a little bit more public so people would know that was going to happen before the people just started moving in.
Yes, that's the intent.
Okay. And the 20-day notification, is that a current requirement, or is that a lesser requirement than we currently require?
No, I believe that is the current requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other commissioner comments, I'll just say that I appreciate the work done. I think it's great effort towards acknowledging uses that maybe don't fit into traditional zones, while at the same time enhancing public notification and, like Commissioner Lima said, transparency in government, which is a key tenet of what I think we're all trying to achieve. So thank you so much. And I will receive your report and file it. Thank you. And move on to commissioner comments. Anyone want to take this meeting into the 6th hour? Oh, that was communications. Oh, no, that was workshops. Mr. Coyle, before we move to commissioner comments, do you have communications?
I do, just one, and that is, fortunately, no items were referred or continued to a date certain. We do not have any items scheduled for what would be the second meeting in December on the 19th. We also do not have anything currently on the agenda for the first Thursday in January, which is January 2nd. So our next regularly scheduled meeting of the commission will be January 16th of 2020. And in that case, I would like to wish the Planning Commission a very happy holiday, a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and I look forward to doing bigger and better things in 2020. Thank you.
Thank you. So is tonight sort of a way of getting 3 meetings packed into one? Is that not the idea? Get it all in?
It feels like we crammed 5 or 6 meetings into one.
I think Mr. Coyle's sentiment of excited for a break. Thank you. No, but thank you and happy holidays and Happy New Year, and look forward to 2020 as well. We will now move on to commissioner comments. Are there any? Commissioner Coleman, look at that. Even pushed the button.
Thank you. I hate to drag this out any longer, but I did have an item for under commissioner comments. I would like to propose that we create an ad hoc committee at the discretion of the chair to determine how that's structured, to discuss the public notice requirements and how we do that. An example is this last project at Lake Ming, where we notified everybody up to the wall of the community, and so nobody in the community actually got noticed. And I know Mr. Coyle had some comments about having to go back and do that. So I'd like to have us consider creating an ad hoc committee to look at how that's currently done and discuss how it should be done in the future. I think that committee should consist of a couple of commissioners and probably a staff person.
Thank you. I think it's at my discretion, is that, or is that?
Yeah, the chair has the discretion to
Okay.
create and appoint members to
Okay.
committees.
All right, everyone but me. No, I'm just kidding. No, I would say I think that noticing is something that does come up in a lot regularly in the meetings. I would appreciate Commissioner Coleman's question. I think prior to forming a committee, I think it would be, for me, important to identify need. What exactly are we trying to fix? And so I think at that Rio Bravo meeting, it was discussed that potentially a workshop could be done prior so that we had an understanding of what is sort of the the minimum letter of the law, what is the intent of the law, what are other communities doing that maybe provide better knowledge to their community members. And I think from that workshop, I think we could, as a commission, decide what key items we would be needed for a committee, or if we really are pretty consistent with what other jurisdictions are doing. So that would be my motion, if you're okay with that, Commissioner.
I would be agreeable to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's not a motion because it's not on the agenda, but you're, during commissioner comments, asking staff to bring back a workshop.
Yeah, so I'd love to have a workshop on the noticing process, and I think hearing Commissioner Coleman, I think at that time we'll be better equipped to make an opinion on whether an ad hoc committee, or if there is something that the commission can assist in making the process better for communication. Thank you. Commissioner Lomas, you can always add something.
I think that's great, and if you could just give the graphs, just say, under these conditions, this is what we do, that'd be real easy. Thanks.
Commissioner Wade?
Director Coyle, I listened as you were talking about how, I guess my perception of what you were saying was that it was unnecessary for staff to have renoticed the issue around Lake Ming. And you mentioned that that the staff was compliant with the law. And we had just finished reviewing something in regards to discussing about whether there's going to be a 50,000-foot cutoff or 20,000-foot cutoff, where we weren't talking about compliant with the law. We were talking about what was best for the community. And in this, particularly in that case with Lake Ming, I think that our standards are written for an urban environment. This is the city of Bakersfield, or at least a suburban urban environment. Lake Ming is a strange place in the city of Bakersfield. And the majority of people that lived in that area and that would be affected by that development did not find out about it. They were not noticed. And you said that it was their civic duty. It was the citizens of Bakersfield's civic duty to check the Planning Commission agenda every week. You use the term civic duty, and I don't think it's the civic duty of the citizens of Bakersfield to make sure their property rights aren't infringed upon every week by having to go to the website and check things out. So I just think that's a bar that's too high in terms of our service to the citizens of Bakersfield. So with something like that, to have said, there is a community right there on the edge of the radius that we're supposed to notice, we should notice those people even if they are just outside of it. I think that's going beyond what is compliant with the law. So I would love to hear more about how we could possibly change it to have more common sense applied to it.
Thank you, Commissioner Wade. Yeah, I'd agree. I just think that the intent of this commission, the intent of, we're not trying to pull the rug over anyone in our community. And so I think if there are ways that we can be more transparent, I am respectful of, I think, what's the realistic, time and economic impact of noticing. So that would be interesting as well. But I think it really is just something that we hear a lot. Community members come and say, I had no idea that they were building a hotel in my backyard, or, and so, yeah, I just think that I'd appreciate, I look forward to your workshop. Yes. And I will just acknowledge, I never thought Commissioner Wade would chime in on a comment at 9:26. So kudos to you, Commissioner Wade. Yeah. All right. And Commissioner Lomas.
And that's why I was saying in a graph, because those were maps. That was not a general plan amendment or a zone change, which is signage. And that's the whole point of signage. So that was a map completely different. So that's why I'm asking for a graph to say, in this circumstance, this is what we do. Okay? Yeah? Thanks.
All right. Anyone? Commissioner Bowers, you want to have the last word? I'll give you the last word if you want. Yeah.
Well,
I have to adjourn the meeting. So you have the last word, and I'll just adjourn.
Well, thank you, guys. It's been such a distinct privilege and honor to serve with you this year. And staff, thank you for the phenomenal work that you've done and the exceptional advice. Should I just keep going? But no, you guys have been phenomenal. Wish you guys a Merry Christmas. I'm just trying to eat up. I'm filibustering here now. Thank you guys so much. You guys have been phenomenal. Thank you.
And I will pass that along to the staff who actually make all of this happen, so that all I have to do is come in and read some stuff. But thank you very much.
With the hope and optimism in the room, I will say happy holidays, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year. And may we, enjoy the time with your family. And I will adjourn the meeting at 9:27, just short of 4 hours. Oh, all right. Noted. Please note.
Merry Christmas.